Hey guys, tonight we're setting sail for the treacherous shores of a Caribbean pirate hideout, where the sand burns your feet and the welcome committee carries cutlasses instead of cocktails. The salty air fills your lungs as waves crash against jagged rocks, and the distant sounds of drunken sea shanties drift from a collection of ramshackle buildings ahead. Let me be brutally honest, your soft, modern sensibilities give you about as much chance of surviving here as an ice cube in the Sahara. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from tonight, so drop your location and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The year is 1715. The golden age of piracy is in full swing, and you've just been forcibly recruited after your merchant vessel was captured by a notorious pirate crew. As the longboat scrapes against the sandy shore of a small, uncharted island somewhere in the Caribbean, you're shoved forward by a burly man with a patchy beard and breath that could strip paint. Your wrists are bound with rough hemp rope that digs into your skin with every movement, a constant reminder that you're no longer a free person. The beach before you is nothing like the pristine tourist destinations of today's Caribbean. Instead of white sand and gently swaying palm trees, you're greeted by a littered shoreline scattered with broken rum bottles, rotting driftwood, and what appears to be, yes, that's definitely a human skull being used as a makeshift candle holder. The first step onto a pirate hideout, and you're already questioning your chances of seeing tomorrow's sunrise. Historians generally agree that pirate settlements were strategically located on islands with natural harbors, often concealed from passing ships by geographic features like hidden coves or reef systems. What's less commonly discussed is how these hideouts were often temporary, with pirates frequently abandoning locations once naval authorities discovered them. In fact, some scholars still argue whether permanent pirate settlements, like the legendary Libertalia in Madagascar, ever actually existed, or were merely colorful fabrications in period literature. As you're marched up the beach, the sun beats down on you with merciless intensity. Unlike the pirates with their weather-beaten skin and sweat-stained clothing adapted for the climate, you're woefully unprepared for the Caribbean heat. You're already developing a sunburn that will blister painfully by evening, and your throat burns with thirst. The pirates, naturally, offer you no water. Hydration isn't exactly a priority when your life expectancy can be measured in weeks rather than years. Move faster, fresh meat, barks a woman with a face crosshatched with scars and a gold tooth that catches the sunlight. You're surprised to see a female pirate, but historical records confirm that women like Anne Bonny and Mary Read did indeed pursue the pirating profession, often disguising themselves as men until they established enough of a reputation to reveal their true identities. They were typically just as ruthless as their male counterparts, if not more so, as they had twice as much to prove. The path from the beach leads upward through tangles of tropical vegetation. Your city shoes slip on the muddy incline as biting insects swarm around your face and neck. The pirates seem unbothered, having developed an immunity to these minor discomforts. Your swatting and scratching provides them with obvious amusement, and one particularly nasty character with a missing ear flicks a centipede the length of your forearm onto your shoulder, sending you into a panic that has the entire group howling with laughter. As you reach the top of the path, the pirate haven comes into full view, and any romantic notions you might have harbored about the freedom of pirate life evaporate like morning dew under the tropical sun. The settlement is a chaotic jumble of structures that barely qualify as buildings: tents made from salvaged ship sails, crude wooden shacks with palm leaf roofs, and a few slightly more substantial structures that you'll later learn belong to the captain and his officers. The stench hits you next, a potent cocktail of unwashed bodies, rotting food, human waste, and the ever-present smell of rum. Your stomach heaves, but you manage to keep your meager rations down. Throwing up now would only mark you as weak, and in this world, weakness is tantamount to signing your own death warrant. People, if you can call these wild-eyed, filthy individuals people anymore, move about the settlement with purpose. Some mend nets or repair weapons, while others sort through what appears to be recently plundered loot. A group of men near what passes for the center of town are engaged in a knife-throwing contest, using a live rat nailed to a post as their target. The poor creature's squeals pierce the general cacophony of shouts, curses, and occasional gunshots. "This here's our new cabin boy," announces the burly man who shoved you ashore, presenting you to a cluster of pirates lounging in the shade of a makeshift awning. They eye you with a mixture of disinterest and predatory assessment, like wolves deciding whether a particular sheep is worth the effort of bringing down. "Looks soft," comments one, a tall, gaunt man missing several fingers. "Won't last till sunset." 10 pieces of 8 says he don't survive the week, says another, scratching at a rash on his neck that you desperately hope isn't contagious. "You're both wrong," laughs a third, a squat man with elaborate tattoos covering most of his visible skin. "Captain'll feed him to the sharks by noon if he can't prove his worth." This casual wagering on your imminent demise sends a chill down your spine despite the oppressive heat. You've been on the island less than an hour, and already your life has been reduced to a trivial betting matter among men who kill as easily as they breathe. You're led, or more accurately, dragged toward a larger structure near the center of the settlement. This, you assume, must be where the captain holds court. The building is cobbled together from shipwrecked timber, with a ship's wheel mounted above the entrance and various naval flags decorating the exterior. 2 intimidating guards armed with cutlasses and flintlock pistols flank the doorway, their expressions stony as your captors approach with you in tow. "Fresh fish for the captain," explains your burly escort, giving you another painful shove forward. One of the guards nods and pushes open the crude door. "He's in a mood today," he warns. "Lost 3 good men to the Royal Navy yesterday." Your heart sinks further. A pirate captain in a bad mood is the last person you want to meet on your first day in this hellish place. But as you're about to discover, meeting the captain is just the beginning of your ordeal. The true challenge lies in navigating the Byzantine social structures, deadly environmental hazards, and violent daily realities of a Caribbean pirate hideout, challenges that your modern sensibilities have in no way prepared you to face. As you're thrust into the captain's quarters, your eyes take a moment to adjust to the dim interior after the harsh Caribbean sunlight. Unlike the crude shacks that make up most of the settlement, the captain's dwelling boasts actual furnishings, a heavy wooden desk, clearly stolen from a merchant vessel, several mismatched chairs, and walls adorned with navigation charts, wanted posters, including one of the captain himself, and an impressive collection of captured flags. The captain himself is a surprise. Rather than the towering, bearded monster you expected, you're confronted with a slender man of medium height with calculating eyes and meticulously clean hands, unusual in a place where personal hygiene seems optional at best. Historical accounts often note that successful pirate captains were rarely the strongest or most violent men, but rather shrewd strategists with exceptional leadership abilities. This man, with his quiet intensity and watchful gaze, certainly fits that description. Name, he asks without preamble, not bothering to look up from the ledger he's examining. You stammer out your name, your voice cracking embarrassingly. Skills, he continues, still not looking at you. Here's where things get tricky. In the early 18th century, useful maritime skills included navigation, carpentry, and medical knowledge. Unless you happen to be a sailing enthusiast or traditional craftsperson in your modern life, you likely possess none of these talents. Telling the captain you're proficient in Excel spreadsheets or social media management won't exactly improve your standing. You mention whatever practical abilities you have, which the captain dismisses with a derisive snort. Another useless mouth to feed, he mutters. Then, finally looking up at you with those unnerving eyes, you get one day to prove your worth. One day, or you'll feed the sharks. He waves dismissively, and you're dragged back outside. What follows is your crash course in navigating the chaotic nightmare that is a pirate hideout. Your guide, though guard would be more accurate, is a one-eyed man who introduces himself simply as Rat. The nickname, you soon learn, comes from his uncanny ability to find food in the most unlikely places, a valuable skill in a settlement where regular meals aren't guaranteed. Keep up and keep quiet, Rat grunts, as he leads you through the ramshackle collection of buildings. And watch where you step. Some folk here would gut you for scuffing their boots. The settlement follows no logical layout whatsoever. Unlike colonial towns with their neat grids or European villages that developed organically around central features like churches or markets, pirate hideouts grew haphazardly, with new structures erected wherever space allowed. Historians note that this chaotic arrangement actually served a defensive purpose. Attackers would find themselves in a confusing maze where every corner might hide an armed defender. What's less commonly mentioned in historical texts is how this lack of planning created dead-end passages and bottlenecks that frequently led to violent confrontations among the drunken inhabitants. As you follow Rat, you witness two such incidents: a knife fight erupting over right-of-way in a narrow alley, and a man being unceremoniously tossed through the sailcloth wall of a makeshift tavern for some unspecified offense. You pass what appears to be the settlement's main gathering area, a cleared space surrounded by the largest structures. Here, pirates engage in various activities, from trading plundered goods to gambling away their shares in games of chance. A crude gallows stands at one end of the square, a grim reminder of the consequences of crossing the wrong people. "That's the counting house," Rat says, pointing to a relatively sturdy building guarded by two massive men armed with blunderbusses. "Where the loot's kept till it's divided. Try to sneak in there, and they'll make an example of you." He gestures to the gallows with a grin that reveals several gaps in his yellowed teeth. Next comes the shipyard, though calling it that is generous. It's really just a sloped area of beach where smaller vessels are dragged for repairs. Several men work on a damaged longboat, patching holes with oakum and tar. The air here is thick with the smell of pitch and wood shavings. "Carpenter's important here," Rat informs you. "Him and the sailmaker. Without them, we're stranded." This hierarchical value system, where those with essential skills received better treatment, was indeed documented in pirate crews of the Golden Age. While the captain and quartermaster held formal authority, skilled tradesmen enjoyed significant respect and privileges. You continue past what can only be described as a shantytown, a collection of lean-tos and hammocks strung between trees where the lowest-ranking pirates sleep exposed to the elements. The ground here is littered with trash, bodily fluids, and passed-out men sleeping off their rum. This, you realize with sinking heart, is likely where you'll be spending your nights if you survive that long. "Fiddlers," Rat says, pointing to smoking fire pits where men stir enormous cauldrons of what you hope is stew. Food's served once daily, unless you've got coin or favor to trade for extra. The implication is clear. Hunger will be your constant companion, unless you find ways to ingratiate yourself with the right people. Sanitation is non-existent by modern standards. What passes for toilets are simply designated areas slightly removed from the main settlement, usually downwind when the breeze cooperates. No privacy, no hygiene, just open ditches that are occasionally covered with dirt when the smell becomes too offensive even for hardened pirates. Scholars agree that disease spread rapidly in such conditions, and historical records suggest that illness claimed nearly as many pirate lives as combat or execution. Your tour continues to the settlement's perimeter, where crude watchtowers made from lashed-together timber provide vantage points for spotting approaching vessels. "Always manned," Rat explains. "Navy loves finding hideouts like this. Last year, they burnt 3 settlements along the Spanish Main. Indeed, historical records confirm that throughout the 1710s, British naval forces conducted aggressive campaigns against pirate strongholds, gradually restricting the areas where outlaws could safely harbor. What fascinates and terrifies you most is how the entire settlement seems balanced on a knife edge between function and chaos. There are systems in place, guards, food distribution, defensive measures, but they're maintained by shared self-interest rather than any true authority. Violence, or the threat of it, settles most disputes, and you witness no fewer than a dozen potentially lethal confrontations, diffused only by the presence of armed bystanders who could join either side. Quartermaster's hut, Rat says, pointing to a structure slightly larger than the average shack. He handles disputes, distributes shares. Captain commands at sea, but here, Quartermaster has final say in most matters. This dual power structure was indeed a historical reality in many pirate operations, serving as a crude check against the captain's authority and preventing the tyranny that many pirates had fled from naval or merchant service. Some scholars still debate whether this system represented an early form of democratic governance, or was simply a practical arrangement born of necessity. What's clear from your observations is that it's far from the romantic notions of freedom and equality portrayed in popular fiction. The strong still dominate the weak, and while a pirate might theoretically vote on major decisions, your chance of influencing outcomes as a newcomer with no allies is effectively zero. As your tour continues, you're increasingly aware of being evaluated by everyone you pass. Some assess you with naked hostility, others with calculating interest, and a few with the kind of predatory gaze that makes your skin crawl. In this environment, you are a resource to be exploited, a potential threat to be neutralized, or simply fresh entertainment in the dreary routine of hideout life. Surgeon's place, Rat says, nodding toward a tent from which agonized screams emerge. Lost 2 fingers in a fight last month. He saved the hand. He displays his damaged appendage proudly, as if the crude amputation represents the height of medical care. By modern standards, it's barbaric. But in an era before antibiotics or anesthesia, a pirate surgeon who could keep amputation patients alive was worth his weight in gold. And that's the tour, Rat concludes, as you complete your circuit of the settlement. Captain says you've got 1 day to find your place. Suggest you start by making yourself useful to someone important. With that less than helpful advice, he saunters off, leaving you alone amid the chaos. You stand there, overwhelmed by sensory input and the enormity of your predicament. The settlement buzzes with dangerous activity all around you, drunken arguments, high-stakes gambling, weapons being maintained, loot being sorted. Everyone has a purpose, a function, a place in this twisted community. Everyone except you. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, beating down mercilessly on your already sunburned skin, you realize with crystal clarity that navigation in this place isn't just about finding your way around the physical space. It's about maneuvering through a deadly social labyrinth where a wrong step could be your last. And you've barely begun to understand the rules of the game. The first night in the pirate hideout passes in a blur of discomfort and fear. As predicted, you're allocated a space, though space is generous in the squalid area where the lowest ranking pirates sleep. Your bed is a scrap of sailcloth thrown over packed earth, positioned between a man with suppurating leg wounds and another who mutters continuously in his sleep about sea monsters and lost treasure. Sleep comes in fitful bursts, interrupted by the sounds of drunken brawls, distant gunshots, and the persistent whine of mosquitoes that seem to find you especially delicious. Dawn arrives with brutal abruptness in the form of a boot to your ribs. You gasp awake to find a weathered pirate standing over you, tobacco-stained teeth bared in what might be a smile or a snarl. It's difficult to tell the difference. Up fresh meat, sun's breaking, and there's work to be done. You quickly learn that in a pirate hideout, morning doesn't begin with gentle alarm clocks, hot showers, or leisurely breakfasts. It begins with violence, continues with backbreaking labor, and offers no comfort whatsoever for modern sensibilities. Historical accounts confirm that pirate settlements operated on schedules dictated by daylight and necessity rather than clocks. Work began at first light, simply because candles and oil for lamps were valuable commodities not to be wasted on routine tasks. What's less documented in popular history is how this natural rhythm created a particular brutality to mornings, everyone rushing to secure limited resources and establish their daily position in the ever-shifting hierarchy. As you stumble to your feet, the settlement is already buzzing with activity. Those who passed out drunk the night before are being unceremoniously awakened with buckets of seawater or kicks to the head. Several men gather around the still warm fire pits, warming their hands and cooking whatever meager breakfast they've secured for themselves. No one offers you food, and you quickly realize that breakfast, like everything else here, must be earned or taken. Your empty stomach clenches painfully as you follow the crowd toward what appears to be a morning muster. Pirates gather in rough groupings, and you notice a rudimentary organization emerging. Those with special skills or positions, the carpenter, the gunner, the bosun, stand apart with their respective assistants and apprentices. Others clump together based on whatever vessel they serve on during raids. As a newcomer with no defined role, you hover awkwardly at the edges, trying to look purposeful while seeking guidance. The quartermaster, a broad-shouldered man with a perpetual scowl and elaborate scarification across his chest, emerges from his hut and begins barking orders. Work assignments for the day are handed out with all the ceremony of dealing cards. Shore parties to collect fresh water and hunt game, repair crews for damaged vessels, sentries for the watchtowers, and various maintenance tasks around the settlement. When the quartermaster's gaze falls on you, there's a moment of contemplation before he points to a group of haggard-looking individuals being supervised by a particularly vicious-looking woman with a whip coiled at her belt. "Fresh meat for the work gang," he announces, generating a few chuckles from the assembled pirates. Your work gang, you quickly discover, handles the settlement's most unpleasant tasks. Your first assignment of the morning is clearing out the waste ditches, literally shoveling human excrement into deeper holes and covering them with dirt and lime. The stench is overwhelming, triggering your gag reflex repeatedly. Your fellow workers seem immune to the smell, chatting casually while wading through filth that would send a modern health inspector into conniptions. First day's always the worst, offers one man, noticing your distress. His face is a roadmap of scars, and his left ear is missing entirely. Nose gets used to it after a while. Unless the fever takes you first, adds another with a wheezing laugh that degenerates into a hacking cough. Black fluid from both ends, then your shark food by sunset. The casual reference to disease and death sends another chill through you. Historians estimate that disease killed far more sailors and pirates than naval engagements or executions combined during this era. Dysentery, yellow fever, malaria, and various tropical infections ran rampant in these unsanitary conditions. What's less commonly discussed is how pirates developed their own crude medical treatments, often a bizarre mixture of European humorism, African healing traditions, and native Caribbean practices, all liberally supplemented with rum as both disinfectant and anesthetic. As morning progresses and the sun climbs higher, the temperature rises to unbearable levels. Sweat pours from your body, soaking through your already filthy clothes. Unlike the pirates, whose bodies have adapted to the climate, you feel lightheaded and nauseous from the combination of heat, stench, and dehydration. When you pause to catch your breath, the supervisor's whip cracks uncomfortably close to your ear. No rest for the wicked, she snarls, and you're all damned wicked, or you wouldn't be here. Water is provided in limited quantities, a ladle dipped from a communal bucket that's carried around by a boy missing both feet. The water is brackish and warm, but your parched throat doesn't care about quality. You gulp it greedily when your turn comes, aware that this measly portion must sustain you until the next round. By mid-morning, you've moved on to your second task, carrying heavy stones from the beach to reinforce a defensive wall on the settlement's vulnerable landward side. Each rock feels heavier than the last as your muscles scream in protest. Modern life has not prepared you for this level of physical labor. While the average pirate of this era began seafaring life as a child and developed the wiry strength necessary for climbing rigging and hauling ropes, your body, accustomed to chairs and vehicles and ergonomic sleeping arrangements, betrays you with every step. The work gang supervisor seems to take particular pleasure in your obvious suffering. Soft hands, she comments, grabbing your wrist to display your smooth palms to the others. Bet he's never done an honest day's work in his life. Nothing honest about what we do here, quips another laborer, generating cruel laughter. Historical sources indicate that many pirates came from the lowest rungs of maritime society, pressed naval sailors, impoverished merchant crewmen, or escaped slaves. Their hardened bodies and calloused hands were badges of their difficult lives. Your comparative softness marks you as an outsider as clearly as if you were wearing a sign. Some scholars still debate whether individuals from genteel backgrounds could successfully integrate into pirate society, with some arguing that navigation and accounting skills might offset physical weakness. Your experience suggests otherwise. Physical frailty is a liability that no amount of education can compensate for in this brutal environment. As the morning wears on, you witness the peculiar social dynamics of the hideout in full display. A ship returns from a successful raid, and all work temporarily ceases as pirates flock to the beach to help unload plunder and hear tales of the engagement. The clear hierarchy emerges again, captains and officers first, skilled tradesmen next, common pirates after, with prisoners and slaves last. The division of loot is not the egalitarian affair depicted in romanticized stories. While shares are technically predetermined, the reality involves complex negotiations, intimidation, and occasional violence to secure the best items. You notice how information functions as currency here. Those with news of naval movements, merchant shipping schedules, or conditions in colonial ports receive better treatment, extra rations, or first pick of certain goods. This informal intelligence network was indeed crucial to pirate operations in the historical Caribbean, where advanced knowledge often meant the difference between a successful raid and a date with the hangman. By the time the sun reaches its zenith, you've experienced more physical hardship than most modern humans endure in months. Your hands are blistered and bleeding, your back feels permanently bent, and every muscle trembles with fatigue. Yet the day is only half over, and the afternoon promises even more challenging tasks. The brutal morning routine has accomplished its purpose, breaking down newcomers, identifying the weak, and establishing dominance hierarchies that govern every aspect of hideout life. As your work gang is herded toward the smoking fire pits for the daily meal, you catch sight of the captain observing the settlement from outside his quarters. His calculating gaze sweeps over the hive of activity, pausing briefly on you. There's no sympathy in those eyes, only cold assessment. You're a resource to be utilized until expended, nothing more. In this moment, the romantic notions of pirate freedom that persist in modern imagination crumble entirely. This is not liberty, but a different kind of bondage, one where survival depends on strength, cunning, and a willingness to participate in brutality. The morning routine has provided your first real lesson in pirate life. Here, you work or you die. There is no third option. Midday in the pirate hideout brings what passes for the main meal of the day, though calling it lunch would suggest a civility entirely absent from the experience. The work gangs converge on the central cooking area, a series of fire pits over which hang large iron cauldrons tended by the settlement's cooks. These aren't trained chefs, but rather pirates too injured or old for active raiding, relegated to food preparation as their contribution to the community. Historical accounts confirm that pirate diets during the Golden Age consisted primarily of provisions that could withstand lengthy voyages without spoiling: salt beef, hardtack biscuits, dried peas, and rum being staples. On land, these might be supplemented with fresh game, fish, tropical fruits, and vegetables traded or stolen from nearby settlements. What the history books often gloss over is just how utterly revolting much of this food would be by modern standards. You join the unruly queue forming around the largest cauldron, quickly learning that position in line directly corresponds to status in the pirate hierarchy. As a newcomer assigned to the work gang, you're unceremoniously shoved to the back, where you wait while the sun beats down on your already sunburned neck. By the time you reach the front, nearly an hour has passed, and the cauldron contains nothing but a thin, greasy liquid with unidentifiable floating objects that might charitably be called stew. The cook, a one-legged man with burn scars covering most of his visible skin, eyes you dispassionately before ladling a meager portion into the crude wooden bowl you've been handed. No utensils are provided. You're expected to use your fingers or drink directly from the bowl like most others are doing. The first taste nearly makes you retch. The stew is a nauseating combination of overboiled salt meat, which might be beef, but could just as easily be rat, something vaguely vegetable-like, and a broth so salty it makes your cracked lips burn. Floating on the surface is a film of grease that coats your mouth in a way that will linger for hours. But hunger is a powerful motivator, and despite the revolting flavor and texture, your empty stomach demands sustenance. You find a relatively clean spot on a fallen log to sit and eat, only to be immediately chased away by a group of pirates who apparently claim this particular log as their dining territory. This pattern repeats twice more until you resign yourself to eating while standing in the shade of a scraggly tree, constantly vigilant against anyone who might decide to claim your spot, or worse, your food. Scholars of pirate history have often noted the seemingly democratic nature of pirate crews, with their elected captains and relatively fair distribution of plunder. What's less frequently discussed is how this democratic ideal existed alongside a brutal practical reality where the strong still dominated the weak in countless daily interactions. Nowhere is this more evident than during meals, where theoretical equality of shares means little when someone bigger and more violent can simply take what they want. As you choke down the unappetizing stew, you observe the complex social dynamics playing out around the eating area. Pirates cluster in tight-knit groups. Those who serve on the same ship, hail from the same country, or share similar backgrounds tend to eat together, offering protection in numbers. Loners are vulnerable, as you quickly discover when a burly man with elaborate tattoos deliberately bumps into you, causing you to spill half your precious meal. "Watch yourself, fresh meat," he growls, while his companions snicker. You have no recourse, no manager to complain to, no authority to appeal to. In this world, you either endure such treatment silently, fight back, likely to get severely beaten or killed, or find allies who will stand up for you. Since you've been here less than a day, the latter option isn't yet available. The nutritional content of the meal is questionable at best. Modern nutritionists would be horrified by the complete lack of fresh vegetables, except for the occasional tropical fruit, the excessive salt content, and the prevalence of borderline spoiled proteins. Historians still debate the extent of vitamin deficiencies among pirate populations, with some arguing that access to fresh tropical foods, when in port, mitigated the worst effects of scurvy and other nutritional diseases. Your immediate experience suggests otherwise. Many of the pirates around you display telltale signs of various deficiencies, from bleeding gums to poor wound healing to the strange bony deformities that suggest long-term malnutrition. Having finished your meager meal, you notice some pirates trading or bartering for additional food. Those with specialized skills or extra plunder can secure better quality provisions, a piece of fresh fruit, a chunk of less rancid meat, or even exotic items obtained from recent prizes. One man is doing a brisk trade, exchanging small cups of relatively clean drinking water for various trinkets and favors. Water, you quickly realize, is nearly as valuable as rum in this sweltering climate. Speaking of rum, it flows freely even at midday. Unlike water, which must be laboriously collected from inland streams and carried back to the settlement, alcoholic beverages are plentiful thanks to frequent raids on merchant vessels. Many pirates begin serious drinking at the midday meal, and you observe how this contributes to the afternoon's increasingly chaotic atmosphere. Historical records suggest that alcoholism was rampant among pirate communities, serving both as liquid courage before raids and as self-medication against the numerous physical and psychological traumas of their violent lifestyle. You're contemplating whether to try your luck at securing some additional food when a commotion erupts nearby. Two pirates have drawn knives over an accusation of food theft, and a vicious fight breaks out with alarming speed. The crowd forms a circle around the combatants, cheering and placing bets rather than attempting to intervene. Within moments, one man lies bleeding in the dirt with a knife wound to his thigh, while the victor struts around displaying the contested item, a sad-looking orange that nevertheless represents a rare nutritional treasure in this environment. The injured man receives minimal attention from his so-called friends, who drag him toward the surgeon's tent while complaining about lost bets. You've just witnessed another harsh reality of pirate life. Violence, as conflict resolution, is not the exception, but the norm. And consequences for such violence are minimal unless you target someone with powerful allies. As the meal period ends, you notice some pirates carefully preserving leftover food in pockets or small pouches. This hoarding behavior makes perfect sense in an environment where the next meal is never guaranteed, but it contributes to the overall unsanitary conditions as rotting food scraps accumulate in clothing and bedding. What many historical accounts fail to mention about pirate diets is the constant presence of contaminants and pests. As you turn to leave the eating area, you spot numerous rats boldly scavenging discarded scraps, cockroaches scuttling through the dirt, and flies swarming around the cooking pots. The cooks make half-hearted attempts to shoo away the larger pests, but seem to have long ago surrendered to the smaller ones. You realize with dawning horror that the crunchy bits in your stew might not have been intentional texture additions. The aftermath of the meal brings its own challenges. With no facilities for cleaning dishes, most pirates simply wipe their bowls with sand or dirt before hanging them from their belts. Hands remain sticky and greasy, contributing to the spread of disease. Modern concepts of food safety are not merely ignored, but entirely unknown. The germ theory of disease still lies decades in the future, and contemporary medical thinking attributes illness to imbalanced humors or miasmic air rather than bacterial contamination. Your stomach already feels unsettled from the unfamiliar and questionable food. Historical records suggest that newcomers to Caribbean environments often suffered severe digestive issues while their bodies adjusted to local microbes and parasites. Many died during this adjustment period, their bodies unable to maintain adequate hydration through the violent expulsions from both ends. You sincerely hope you won't become another footnote in that grim statistic. As pirates begin to disperse from the meal area, returning to their various duties, or collapsing in drunken stupors depending on their role and inclination, you realize that you've survived your first pirate meal, but just barely. The combination of questionable nutrition, unsafe food handling, and the constant threat of violence makes every meal a potential death sentence in ways your modern mind can barely comprehend. Your brief respite is cut short as the work gang supervisor appears, cracking her whip against the ground near your feet. "Break's over," she barks. "Got plenty more work before sundown." As you trudge back to your assigned tasks with a queasy stomach and lingering hunger, you understand that mealtime in a pirate hideout isn't the social, pleasurable experience of the modern world. It's just another battle for survival in a place where nothing, not even basic nutrition, can be taken for granted. The afternoon sun beats down mercilessly as your work gang is assigned to repair a section of palisade wall that surrounds the landward side of the settlement. The physical labor is grueling, but it's the accumulating filth that begins to truly wear on your modern sensibilities. Your body is covered in layers of grime, salt spray, sweat, dirt, food residue, and substances you'd rather not identify form a pungent crust on your skin. Your clothes, still the same ones you were wearing when captured, have become stiff with dried sweat and seawater. You notice an acrid smell following you everywhere until the horrifying realization dawns it's you. Or rather, it's everyone. The entire settlement exists in a miasma of body odor, rotting food, human waste, and tropical decay that would make even the most olfactorily tolerant modern person gag continuously. Historical accounts often gloss over the hygienic realities of the 18th century, particularly in remote outlaw settlements. Even by the standards of the time, pirate hideouts represented an extreme in human filth. While wealthy Europeans might have weekly bathing rituals and perfumed powders to mask odors, pirates lived in conditions where regular bathing was neither practical nor prioritized. What's particularly fascinating to historians, but horrifying in practice, is how pirates developed their own unique hygiene customs based on practical necessity rather than health knowledge. For instance, many kept their hair extremely short or shaved their heads entirely, not as a fashion statement, but as a defense against the rampant lice and other parasites that thrived in the tropical climate. Others adopted the practice of coating their bodies with a mixture of tar and tallow, which provided some protection against biting insects, while waterproofing their skin against constant exposure to seawater. The resulting appearance was demonic by modern standards: blackened skin, teeth stained from tobacco and scurvy, and eyes often yellowed from liver damage due to excessive alcohol consumption. Your supervising pirate seems to notice your discomfort and cackles with amusement. "Pretty boy wants a bath, does he?" she mocks. "Wait for the rain if you're desperate, or swim in the cove with the sharks." A grizzled pirate, missing several teeth, overhears and spits a stream of tobacco juice that lands alarmingly close to your foot. "Bathing's dangerous anyway," he offers with complete seriousness. "Opens the pores to diseased spirits. That's how Blackbeard's quartermaster died, took a sea bath, and was dead of fever by morning." While this medical theory is complete nonsense by modern understanding, it was consistent with contemporary beliefs about disease transmission, where bad air or imbalanced humors were thought to cause illness rather than germs. Some scholars still debate whether pirates were more or less hygienic than their contemporaries in official naval service. The close quarters on naval vessels certainly created similar conditions for disease spread, but the rigid hierarchy and discipline of military ships maintained at least basic cleanliness standards. Pirate vessels and settlements, governed by looser rules and populated by men often in various stages of drunkenness, typically fared worse in sanitation matters. As you continue working on the palisade, you notice a constant itching sensation developing across your body. At first, you try to ignore it, but it becomes increasingly distracting until you finally give in and scratch only to discover small insects crawling on your skin. You've become host to some of the hideout's many parasites. Lice, fleas, ticks, and various tropical insects view humans as convenient food sources and breeding grounds. Historical accounts confirm that body parasites were so common in these environments that they were considered an inevitable aspect of life rather than an exception. Your obvious disgust provides entertainment for your fellow workers. "Fresh meats making friends," one comments as you frantically try to brush the tiny creatures from your arm. "Wait till he finds the ones that burrow under the skin," another adds with malicious glee. "Little worms that make homes in your feet if you walk barefoot." He's referring to parasitic sand fleas, or jiggers, that were indeed common in Caribbean coastal areas and could lay eggs under human skin, causing painful infections when the larvae developed. Lack of clean water makes proper hygiene impossible. What little fresh water the settlement has is reserved for drinking. Using it for washing would be considered an unconscionable waste. The alternative seawater offers limited cleansing properties due to its salt content, and actually leaves a residue that attracts more dirt. Some pirates attempt to maintain minimal cleanliness by scrubbing with sand, which removes the outer layer of grime, but also abrads the skin, creating entry points for infection. Speaking of infection, you begin to notice the prevalence of untreated wounds and skin conditions throughout the hideout. Nearly every pirate sports some combination of festering cuts, boils, mysterious rashes, or fungal infections. In an era before antibiotics, even minor injuries could develop into life-threatening conditions. What modern medicine would treat with a simple course of antibiotics or antifungals often resulted in amputation or death in the early 18th century. The surgeons of the time, often former barbers with rudimentary medical training, relied heavily on techniques like bloodletting and cauterization that frequently caused more harm than good. You observe the hideout's surgeon at work as you pass his tent, watching with horror as he applies a red-hot iron to a screaming man's infected arm. The smell of burning flesh adds another nauseating layer to the settlement's olfactory assault. Teeth are a particular horror show. Dental hygiene is non-existent, resulting in blackened, rotting teeth or empty gums where teeth once resided. The pirate's diet of hardships, biscuit, sugar when available, and acidic foods combined with scurvy, vitamin C deficiency creates perfect conditions for dental catastrophe. Many older pirates are nearly toothless, while younger ones display varying stages of dental decay. The constant pain this must cause is managed primarily through copious alcohol consumption and tobacco use, both of which actually accelerate the deterioration. Historical accounts suggest that some pirates attempted to create primitive toothbrushes from frayed twigs or cleaning agents from crushed coral and salt. But these were exceptions rather than common practice. What's less commonly discussed in historical texts is how this poor dental health affected everything from speech patterns to eating abilities to combat effectiveness. A pirate in the throes of a serious toothache might be significantly compromised in his fighting abilities, something naval authorities occasionally exploited by timing raids. For when provisions like sugar had recently been distributed among pirate crews, knowing the resulting dental pain would peak days later. As afternoon progresses, you experience one of the tropical environment's most vicious assaults, the insects. Mosquitoes swarm in clouds around any exposed skin, leaving itchy welts that you instinctively scratch, creating small wounds that are promptly contaminated by the omnipresent filth. Sand flies, nearly invisible, but with a bite like red-hot needles, attack your ankles and wrists. Larger flying insects crash into your face with alarming frequency. The pirates, naturally, have adapted. Many coat exposed skin with mixtures of animal fat and various pungent substances, tobacco juice, garlic, urine, that repel insects through sheer offensive odor. Others maintain a constant cloud of tobacco smoke around themselves, which provides some relief from flying pests. You, with neither tobacco nor access to these folk remedies, are essentially defenseless. Your water ration for the afternoon consists of a single ladle from a barrel containing brackish, lukewarm liquid that tastes faintly of the wooden container and whatever was stored in it previously. You drink it anyway, your thirst overwhelming any concerns about contamination. Dehydration is a constant threat in the tropical heat, especially when engaged in physical labor. historical records indicate that many newcomers to Caribbean climates died simply from dehydration and heat exposure before their bodies could acclimate. The combination of poor hydration, questionable nutrition, and non-existent hygiene creates perfect conditions for disease transmission. You notice several pirates suffering from symptoms that your modern knowledge identifies as potentially serious conditions: the yellowed eyes of hepatitis or jaundice, the uncontrolled shivering of malaria despite the heat, the ominous bloody cough of tuberculosis. These individuals continue working or socializing, unknowingly spreading their conditions to others. One particularly dreaded disease in pirate communities was yaws, a bacterial infection related to syphilis that caused painful skin ulcers and eventually disfiguring bone deformities. You spot several pirates with the characteristic lesions, giving them a truly monstrous appearance. Historical sources confirm that yaws was endemic in many Caribbean pirate settlements, spread through casual contact in the overcrowded, unsanitary conditions. Speaking of syphilis and other venereal diseases, they run rampant as well. While women are relatively rare in most pirate hideouts, prostitutes often visit when ships are in port, and many pirates contract infections that they then spread throughout the community. The mercury-based treatments of the time were nearly as devastating as the diseases themselves, causing neurological damage, kidney failure, and ultimate death if used long-term. As you finish your work on the palisade and are herded toward your next assignment, you pass the settlement's rudimentary hospital, really just a larger tent, where the most seriously ill or injured are placed, often to die. The stench emanating from the opening is so potent it stops you in your tracks, a noxious combination of gangrenous flesh, bodily waste from those too weak to move, and the copperpenny smell of blood. The mournful groans and occasional screams from within suggest a level of suffering that defies modern comprehension. Keep moving, snaps your supervisor, unless you're volunteering to be a surgeon's assistant. Her laugh suggests this would not be a desirable assignment. By late afternoon, your skin has developed an itchy rash from some combination of sun exposure, salt, sweat, and constant contact with filth. Each movement causes discomfort as your clothes chafe against irritated skin. The cuts and blisters on your hands from the morning's labor have become inflamed and painful, likely infected from exposure to countless bacteria. In the modern world, you treat these with antibiotic ointment and clean bandages. Here, your options are limited to seawater, which will sting horribly, but has some antiseptic properties, or the surgeon's attention, which might involve cauterization or amputation if he deems the infection serious. You choose to endure the pain rather than risk more extreme cures. This, too, reflects historical reality. Many pirates preferred to suffer known discomforts rather than subject themselves to the often brutal medical practices of the era. Some developed their own folk remedies, drawing on knowledge from African, indigenous Caribbean, and European traditions to create treatment options less traumatic than conventional medicine of the time. As your first day in the pirate hideout approaches its final hours. You've gained intimate knowledge of why modern sanitation, hygiene practices, and medical care are not luxury items, but essential components of human survival. The constant assault of parasites, bacteria, viruses, fungi, and environmental hazards creates a daily battle that leaves no one truly healthy, merely varying degrees of sick. Even the strongest pirates bear the marks of this ongoing war against microscopic enemies they cannot see or understand, but whose effects they know all too well. As the workday finally draws to a close with the lowering sun, a noticeable shift occurs in the pirate hideout's atmosphere. The frantic pace of necessary tasks gives way to a different kind of energy, one focused on release, recreation, and entertainment. For pirates who spent weeks or months at sea under the strict discipline required for successful voyaging and raiding, these evening hours represent precious freedom. Unfortunately, as you'll soon discover, pirate entertainment bears little resemblance to the civilized leisure activities of your modern world. The central gathering area of the settlement transforms as makeshift tables are dragged out, torches and lanterns are lit, and numerous casks of rum are positioned strategically around the perimeter. Pirates who appeared half dead from exhaustion hours earlier now emerge from their quarters with renewed vigor, drawn by the promise of alcohol and diversion. Historical accounts confirm that drinking was the centerpiece of pirate recreation. Rum, distilled from Caribbean sugarcane, was the beverage of choice, often consumed in quantities that would incapacitate or kill modern drinkers unaccustomed to such potent spirits. What's less commonly discussed in popular histories is how this prodigious alcohol consumption served multiple purposes beyond simple intoxication. It acted as pain management for numerous chronic injuries, temporarily relieved symptoms of various diseases, and provided much-needed calories to undernourished bodies. You watch in fascination and horror as the evening's entertainment begins to unfold. At one table, a high-stakes dice game has attracted a rowdy crowd. The stakes include not just coins and valuables, but also captured weapons, future work assignments, and even ownership rights to slaves or indentured servants. The tension around the table is palpable, with hands never straying far from knife hilts or pistol grips. Historical records document numerous deadly brawls arising from gambling disputes in pirate communities, where accusations of cheating were often settled permanently with cold steel. Fresh meat should try his luck, suggests Rat, the one-eyed pirate who showed you around earlier. He's materialized beside you with alarming stealth. A few lucky rolls could improve your situation considerably. The predatory gleam in his single eye suggests your luck would be carefully managed to benefit others rather than yourself. You wisely decline, aware that entering a game with no understanding of the specific rules and customs would be financial suicide at best, actual suicide at worst. Your caution earns a knowing chuckle from Rat, who seems to regard your survival instinct with with something approaching approval. Nearby, a crude fighting ring has been established, simply a circle of trampled earth surrounded by shouting spectators. Two bare-chested men circle each other, while onlookers place bets and shout encouragement or abuse. Unlike modern boxing with its rules and referees, this is combat in its most primitive form. No rounds, no prohibited strikes, no victory condition except incapacitation or surrender. The fighters' bodies tell the story of previous bouts through collected scars, misshapen noses, and cauliflower ears. What truly disturbs you is the obvious disparity between the combatants. One is clearly a seasoned fighter with the muscled physique of someone who has spent a lifetime hauling ropes and swinging cutlasses. His opponent is younger, thinner, and bears the marks of recent illness. Yet this uneven match has attracted the most enthusiastic betting, with odds heavily favoring the stronger man. "That's no fair contest," you remark to no one in particular. A nearby pirate, a woman with elaborate tattoos covering most of her visible skin, overhears and laughs. "Fair? Nothing's fair here, Greenlander. The boy insulted Blackbeard's cousin last week. This beating's the price of keeping his tongue." This casual acceptance of brutal punishment as entertainment reflects the different moral universe pirates inhabited, one where violence was not just a tool, but a spectacle and social regulation mechanism. Historians still debate the exact nature and frequency of organized fighting in pirate communities. Some argue that while spontaneous brawls were common, formal combat as entertainment was relatively rare due to the value placed on able-bodied crew members. Others suggest that regulated violence served an important function in bleeding off tensions that might otherwise erupt into more destructive conflicts. Your observation supports the latter view. The crowd's bloodlust is being channeled into a controlled event rather than random violence throughout the settlement. The fight reaches its inevitable conclusion when the stronger man delivers a devastating blow that leaves his opponent unconscious and bleeding from multiple facial wounds. Rather than medical attention, the fallen fighter receives a bucket of seawater to the face before being dragged away by his associates. The victor struts around the ring, collecting congratulatory slaps and a share of the winning bets. Some entertainment forms are less overtly violent, but equally alien to modern sensibilities. A storytelling circle has formed around an elderly pirate with one arm and a seemingly inexhaustible supply of tales. His current narrative involves a mermaid who lured an entire ship's crew to their doom through supernatural seduction. The audience listens with a mixture of skepticism and superstitious fear, occasionally interrupting with questions or competing accounts of similar encounters. What fascinates you about this scene is how it represents the oral tradition that preserved much of pirate history and mythology. In an era when literacy was limited and books precious, storytelling served as both entertainment and information transfer. The old pirates' tales contain practical knowledge about navigational hazards, weather patterns, and coastal defenses woven into supernatural frameworks that made them memorable. Some historians still argue whether certain pirate superstitions, like the belief that women aboard ships brought bad luck, originated as practical concerns. Additional sexual tension among crew, disguised as mystical prohibitions. Another popular entertainment unfolds at a table where a pirate with surprising artistic skill is creating tattoos for a queue of waiting customers. Using needles crafted from fish bones and ink made from gunpowder mixed with various liquids, he methodically punctures designs into his client's skin. The process is obviously painful, but the recipients endure stoically, fortified by generous rum rations. The tattoos themselves range from practical to sentimental to superstitious: ships, religious symbols, lovers' names, protective wards against drowning or disease. Many pirates bear coordinate markings representing significant locations, perhaps burial sites for treasure or safe harbors known only to select crew members. Historians note that these tattoos sometimes served as insurance policies, with pirates threatening to reveal hidden treasure locations to authorities if their comrades didn't arrange their escape from capture. What's less documented in historical texts is how tattoos functioned as permanent identification in an era before photography or fingerprinting. For pirates who might need to change their names or appearance to evade authorities, distinctive tattoos became a reliable recognition system among insiders while remaining meaningless to outsiders. This dual purpose explains why many designs incorporated subtle markers recognizable only to fellow crew members. As darkness fully envelops the settlement, the entertainment grows rowdier and more dangerous. A knife-throwing contest begins, with increasingly difficult targets and reduced distances as participants become more intoxicated. The inevitable injuries are met with laughter rather than concern. Meanwhile, an impromptu orchestra has assembled, drums fashioned from barrels, gut-string instruments, flutes carved from bone or wood, and percussion created by striking together various metal objects. The resulting music is discordant to your modern ear, but energetic and rhythmic. The music inspires dancing of a sort, though calling the resulting activity dancing stretches the definition considerably. It's more a chaotic release of energy, a spinning, stamping expression of temporary freedom from the constant struggle for survival. Some dancers move alone, lost in rum-induced visions, while others grapple with partners in what appears to be some carnal preview of later activities. You maintain a careful position at the periphery of these festivities, aware that your status as fresh meat makes you vulnerable. Several times, drunken pirates approach with unclear, but certainly unpleasant intentions, only to be discouraged by your strategic relocations or the intervention of ongoing entertainment that diverts their attention. One particularly disturbing spectacle begins when a captured prisoner, perhaps from a rival pirate crew or a naval vessel, is brought into the central area. What follows is a calculated humiliation, ritual involving force-feeding, mock executions, and creative use of bodily fluids. The prisoner's obvious terror provides amusement for the crowd, while simultaneously reinforcing the power hierarchy of the settlement. Historians have documented similar ritual humiliations in pirate communities, noting how they served both as entertainment and as object lessons about the consequences of opposition. The most violent entertainment begins near midnight, when sufficient rum has been consumed to lower already minimal inhibitions. A space is cleared, and two pirates armed with cutlasses engage in what is ostensibly a demonstration of swordsmanship, but quickly devolves into a blood sport. Unlike modern fencing, with its protective gear and blunted weapons, this is combat with sharpened steel, where even a minor miscalculation can result in devastating injury. The crowd forms a tight circle around the combatants, pressing inward with each exchange of blows. The gleam of firelight on sweat-slicked skin and bright metal creates an infernal tableau, like something from a medieval painting of hell. When the first blood is drawn, a slice across one fighter's chest that immediately wells with crimson, the crowd's roar takes on a frenzied quality that raises the hair on the back of your neck. Some scholarly debates center around whether such combat exhibitions represented genuine hostility or practiced performance. Your observation suggests both simultaneously. The fighters clearly possess practiced skill, but the rum, audience encouragement, and personal animosity keep pushing them toward truly lethal intent. The bout ends only when the settlement's quartermaster physically intervenes, reminding the participants that dead men can't pull oars, and enforcing a draw by threatening both with punishment if they continue. As the night progresses, you witness numerous other entertainments that range from the merely crude competitions involving bodily functions to the genuinely dangerous fire-breathing demonstrations using high-proof rum, to the outright sadistic baiting a captured wild animal with spears. Throughout it all, rum flows continuously, and the collective behavior grows increasingly unhinged. What's missing in this catalog of entertainment is anything resembling intellectual stimulation, artistic appreciation, or genuine humor. There are no books, no thoughtful conversations, no creative pursuits beyond the most rudimentary music and storytelling. This absence reflects both the limited education of most pirates and the all-consuming nature of their daily struggle for survival. When every day might be your last, immediate physical release takes precedence over contemplative pastimes. By the time the entertainment begins to wane, participants passing out from alcohol or exhaustion, you've witnessed enough to understand that pirate recreation is just another manifestation of the violence that permeates every aspect of hideout life. Even their pleasures are harsh, dangerous, and often cruel, a reflection of men, and some women, whose existence is defined by constant threat, and who know no gentler way to release tension than through activities that would horrify civilized observers. As you seek a relatively safe corner to attempt sleep, stepping over unconscious bodies and avoiding pools of vomit, blood, or worse, you realize that surviving the evening's entertainment was in some ways more challenging than the day's labor. At least work had clear rules and expectations, The night's chaotic revelry followed logic intelligible only to those raised in this brutal world, with death or serious injury just one wrong word or misinterpreted gesture away. Morning arrives with the predictable aftermath of the previous night's excesses, groaning pirates nursing hangovers, the settlement littered with unconscious bodies in various states of dishevelment, and an even more pronounced stench as bodily fluids mix with the usual tropical decay. Those with essential duties are roused by the quartermaster's assistance, often with buckets of seawater or kicks to sensitive areas. Others are permitted to sleep off their indulgences, creating a strange, half-functioning state where parts of the hideout bustle with activity, while others remain dormant. You're awakened early, your status as fresh meat, affording no recovery time regardless of how little sleep you managed to secure in the chaos. Your assignment today is to assist with inventory and distribution of recently acquired plunder, a task that will provide unexpected insights into the surprisingly complex economic system that underpins pirate society. Historical accounts often focus on the dramatic moments of pirate life, the bloody raids, daring escapes, and public executions, while giving comparatively little attention to the economic structures that made their enterprise possible. As you're about to discover, pirate economics involved sophisticated networks of trade, complex valuation systems, and supply chains that spanned continents, all operating outside formal legal structures. Your supervisor for the day is the settlement's quartermaster, the same broad-shouldered, scarified man who assigned work details yesterday. Up close, you notice that beneath his fearsome appearance lies a sharp intelligence, reflected in calculating eyes that miss nothing. This aligns with historical records, suggesting that quartermasters were often among the most educated and mathematically capable members of pirate crews, as their role required accurate accounting and fair distribution of shares. You'll be counting and recording, he informs you, handing over a piece of parchment and a quill pen. Make any attempt to steal, and I'll remove your fingers joint by joint. The matter-of-fact delivery makes the threat all the more chilling. You follow him to a sturdy building guarded by armed pirates, the settlement's storage facility and de facto treasury. Inside, you're greeted by mounds of goods ranging from practical to luxurious, barrels of food staples and rum, crates of weapons and ammunition, bolts of fine fabric, sacks of sugar and spices, boxes of silver tableware, and chests containing coins from various nations. This diversity reflects the reality of pirate plunder. Cash was relatively rare compared to trade goods, which constituted the bulk of cargo in the mercantile shipping lanes pirates targeted. Start with the Spanish coins, the quartermaster orders, pointing to several bags of silver pieces of 8. Count by tens, record each 100. As you begin this tedious task, you notice something surprising. Many coins are clipped or shaved around the edges, reducing their actual silver content while maintaining their countable value. This practice, called coin clipping, was common throughout the colonial world, but especially prevalent in pirate economies where centralized regulation was absent. What's particularly interesting about the pirate approach to currency is their remarkably international outlook. As you count, you handle coins from Spain, Portugal, France, England, various German states, Ottoman territories, and even some unfamiliar Asian currencies. Pirates, by necessity, developed sophisticated knowledge of exchange rates and relative values of these currencies, knowledge that many formal merchants of the era would have envied. Historians still debate whether the pirate economic system represented an early form of free market capitalism, operating outside government control, or a crude communalism where resources were pooled and distributed according to need and rank. Your observations suggest elements of both. Certain goods are carefully counted and allocated according to predetermined shares, while others flow more freely based on immediate requirements. As the morning progresses, pirates begin arriving to claim their portions from recent raids. The process reveals a clear hierarchical structure that contradicts romantic notions of perfect equality among pirate crews. The captain receives multiple shares. Officers get progressively smaller, but still disproportionate amounts. Skilled specialists, like the carpenter and surgeon, claim their enhanced portions, and ordinary crew members receive the standard single share. This graduated system reflects the historical reality documented in pirate articles and accounts of prize distribution. What's less commonly discussed in popular histories is how this distribution extended beyond simple division of spoils to include complex crediting arrangements. You observe pirates trading portions of future shares to settle debts, borrowing against anticipated raids, and engaging in sophisticated speculative transactions that would not look entirely out of place on a primitive Wall Street. "He owes me half his share from the next 3 prizes," explains one pirate as another reluctantly signs an X on a crude contract. "Lost it all gaming last month, but still needs powder and shot for the next raid." The quartermaster carefully records these arrangements in a ledger, serving as both accountant and contractual enforcement. While illiteracy was common among ordinary pirates, those in financial management positions typically possessed at least basic reading and mathematical skills. Some scholars argue that pirate record-keeping systems, while crude by modern standards, represented advanced financial tracking for their time, particularly among working-class populations. What happens if someone doesn't pay their debts? You ask the quartermaster during a brief lull in the distribution. His scarified face twists into what might be a smile. Depends who they owe. Owe the captain or me, they'll face the articles flogging or marooning usually. Owe another crewman, they might lose teeth or fingers. Everyone pays eventually. This combination of formal punishment structures and informal violence created a surprisingly reliable economic system despite the absence of courts or legal enforcement mechanisms. As the day progresses, you witness another vital aspect of pirate economics: trade with the outside world. Despite their outlaw status, pirates couldn't exist in complete isolation. They needed to convert stolen goods into usable supplies, luxury items, and hard currency. This necessity created a shadow economy of middlemen, fences, corrupt officials, and specialized merchants who operated in the gray areas between legitimate commerce and outright piracy. A merchant vessel arrives under a flag of truce. One of these intermediaries come to trade with the settlement. The captain, a portly Dominican with a carefully neutral expression that suggests he's done this many times before, is escorted to the storage building where negotiations begin. He examines the available plunder, carefully separating items into categories. Those he can sell openly in legitimate markets, generic trade goods whose origins are untraceable. Those requiring discreet buyers, items with identifying marks or known to be recently stolen. And those too hot to handle at any price, uniquely identifiable treasures or naval property too dangerous to possess. Historical records confirm the existence of these pirate brokers who facilitated the conversion of stolen goods into usable resources. Port Royal in Jamaica, Nassau in the Bahamas, and certain districts of Havana and Saint Domingue served as notorious centers for such transactions before various naval crackdowns. What's less documented is the complex web of bribery and political protection that allowed these arrangements to function, something you witness firsthand as the merchant casually mentions setting aside portions for our friends in the customs house and the governor's special fund. The negotiations themselves are fascinating, a blend of hard bargaining, veiled threats, and mutual need. The pirates need the merchant's access to legitimate markets. The merchant needs the pirate's discounted goods. Neither fully trusts the other, yet both recognize the necessity of their relationship. Prices are established not through any standardized system, but through a complex calculation of risk, demand, transportability, and the personal relationship between the parties. Half the usual rate for the French brandy the merchant offers. Naval patrols have doubled since you took that mail packet last month. 3/4 counters the quartermaster. We know you've got buyers lined up in Tortuga who'll pay triple. This haggling continues for hours, finally resulting in an exchange that will see selected plunder transferred to the merchant's vessel in exchange for weapons, ammunition, medicine, tools, and a smaller amount of universally accepted currency. The entire transaction occurs without written contracts or receipts, the ultimate handshake deal backed by nothing but reputation, and the implicit threat of violence if either party feels cheated. As you help record and transfer the agreed-upon items, you witness other economic activities throughout the settlement. A crude internal market operates alongside the formal distribution system, with pirates trading personal shares for goods or services they particularly value. One man exchanges a silver candlestick for extra rum rations. Another trades an ornate pistol for treatment of a persistent tooth infection that's been causing him misery. These informal transactions represent a fascinating secondary economy that operated within the larger pirate economic structure. What particularly surprises you is the presence of actual currency within the settlement, despite the barter nature of many transactions. Small copper and silver coins change hands for minor purchases and services, creating a remarkably functional monetary system in this supposedly lawless community. Historical records suggest that this internal currency economy was common in larger pirate settlements, particularly those that served as semi-permanent bases rather than temporary hideouts. By afternoon, the formal distribution is complete, and pirates disperse with their shares, some immediately trading goods for rum or gambling stakes, others carefully securing their portions against future need. The substantial amount of unclaimed goods belonging to dead crew members or held in common storage remains under guard, a tempting target for anyone desperate or foolish enough to attempt theft. As if reading your thoughts, the quartermaster fixes you with a stern look. 3 men tried to rob the storehouse last month, he informs you casually. Their hands are nailed to the palisade by the North Watch post. Still alive last I checked, though the birds have been at them. This grisly deterrent exemplifies how pirate economies maintain security without formal policing, through spectacularly brutal punishment of transgressors, coupled with community enforcement of norms. Your day managing inventory provides insight into another economic reality of pirate life, the boom and bust cycle that dominated their finances. Today's relative abundance will inevitably give way to scarcity as supplies dwindle between successful raids. This feast or famine pattern created a psychological approach to wealth fundamentally different from the steady accumulation valued in legitimate society. Pirates typically spent lavishly when flush with plunder, and endured extreme privation between successful ventures. One reason few pirates ever managed to retire wealthy despite occasionally possessing substantial riches. Some scholars continue to debate whether pirate economic structures represented a rejection of emerging capitalist systems, or simply a criminal parallel to them. Your observations suggest both interpretations contain elements of truth. Pirates utilized market mechanisms and property concepts, while simultaneously maintaining communal ownership of certain resources and rejecting the rigid class distinctions of colonial society. As evening approaches and your inventory duties conclude, you've gained insight into perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of pirate society, their economic organization. Far from the chaotic free-for-all depicted in popular culture, pirate economics involved complex agreements, reliable valuation systems, international trade networks, and surprisingly effective enforcement mechanisms, all operating outside the bounds of official legal structures. You also understand something more personal and disturbing. In this economic system, you yourself represent a potential commodity. Captives with valuable skills could be ransomed or sold. Those without such skills were disposed of or forced into service. Your continued survival depends on demonstrating value within this brutally pragmatic marketplace, where human life is just another resource to be exploited for maximum return. As your second day in the pirate hideout progresses into late afternoon, you're reassigned from inventory duty to a foraging party heading inland to gather fresh fruit and hunt game. This assignment, while escaping the confines of the fetid settlement, introduces an entirely new category of hazards, the diverse and often deadly wildlife of the Caribbean. Foraging party consists of 6 pirates led by a wiry, sun-leathered man introduced only as Porcupine, a nickname derived from the dozens of quill-like scars covering his arms and torso. These marks, you'll soon learn, are souvenirs from a close encounter with a porcupine fish, one of the region's many venomous marine species. The other members carry an assortment of weapons: machetes for clearing paths, spears and nets for hunting and fishing, and pistols for defense against larger threats. Keep your eyes open and your mouth shut, Porcupine growls, as you step into the dense tropical forest that blankets most of the island. Everything here wants to kill you, and most things will succeed. You quickly discover he's not exaggerating. Within minutes of entering the jungle, you spot a green and yellow snake draped across a low-hanging branch directly in your path. One of the pirates casually identifies it as a ferdilance, explaining with evident amusement that its bite delivers enough hemotoxic venom to make your blood leak from every orifice while your tissues dissolve from the inside out. Historians still argue whether pirates carried primitive antivenoms or simply relied on rum and prayer when bitten by such creatures. The tropical rainforests of pirate hideaways contained some of the highest concentrations of venomous snakes in the world, with some islands housing up to 20 different deadly species. You'd be sharing your sleeping quarters with bushmasters, coral snakes, and boa constrictors, creatures that could kill you before you even woke up. It's almost enough to make you miss that disease-ridden hammock back at camp. Almost. Watch your step, Porcupine barks, as you nearly place your foot on what appears to be a fallen log, but is actually a 6-foot caiman sunning itself at the edge of a small stream. The reptile hisses and slithers into the water, its eyes remaining fixed on your group as it submerges, until only those unblinking orbs remain visible. They're the small cousins, another pirate explains. The big ones, crocodiles there in the salt water where the ships anchor. Those beasts can grow to 20 feet. Seen one take a man whole last season. He snaps his fingers, just like that. No screaming even. The humidity of the Caribbean jungle is stifling, causing your clothes to cling to your skin like wet papier-mâché. This dampness, you quickly learn, attracts another peril: insects. Clouds of mosquitoes descend upon your group, their incessant buzzing a maddening soundtrack to your misery. Each bite leaves an angry red welt that itches with remarkable intensity. But itching is the least of your concerns when you learn that these tiny vampires carry yellow fever, malaria, and dengue, diseases that claimed more pirate lives than any naval battle ever did. One especially quirky fact you discover is that pirates often rub themselves with a mixture of palm oil and crushed insects as a primitive bug repellent. The resulting odor is about as pleasant as you'd expect, but watching your companions smear themselves with this foul concoction, you find yourself questioning which is worse, the disease-carrying insects, or smelling like a combination of rancid butter and dead beetles. When in Rome, as they say. Or in this case, when in a pirate-infested jungle, you reluctantly coat yourself in the putrid mixture. It's about as effective as using a paper umbrella in a hurricane, but the psychological comfort is something, at least. Don't touch nothing you don't recognize, Porcupine advises, as you reach for what appears to be a juicy, apple-like fruit. That's manchineel. One bite, and your throat swells shut, while your guts turn to liquid. He points to a set of scarred burns across his neck. Got caught in the rain under one of them trees once. Even the raindrops burn your skin. Indeed, the manchineel tree was so toxic that indigenous peoples used its sap to poison their arrow tips. Pirates, in a rare show of public service, often marked these trees with a red X to warn others away. One of the few instances where they actively tried to prevent death rather than cause it. Modern botanists have confirmed that standing under a manchineel during rainfall can cause severe blistering and temporary blindness. It's like nature's own little chemical warfare experiment, and you've nearly become its latest test subject. As your group pushes deeper into the jungle, the canopy thickens until only dappled sunlight penetrates to the forest floor. The resulting twilight creates perfect hunting conditions for one of the Caribbean's most efficient predators, the jaguar. Though sightings were rare, pirates told tales of sentries disappearing from the perimeter of camps, with only a bloody drag mark leading into the underbrush. You find yourself constantly scanning the shadows between trees, jumping at every snapped twig or rustling leaf. It's exhausting being this terrified all the time. How did pirates manage to sleep? The worst ain't what you can see, mutters a toothless pirate who introduces himself as Scurvy Jack. It's the microscopic devils. He's referring, of course, to parasites, hookworms, that entered through bare feet to feed on blood, botflies that laid eggs under human skin where they hatched into writhing maggots, and various intestinal worms that could grow up to 20 feet long inside a pirate's gut. You absently scratch at your arm, suddenly feeling phantom sensations crawling beneath your skin. Great, now you're developing a psychological condition to accompany your physical miseries. The group stumbles upon a clearing where stands of wild fruit trees offer a momentary respite from the unrelenting horrors of the jungle. But even this brief paradise comes with warnings. Watch for scorpions hiding under fallen fruit. Beware the deadly coral snakes with their distinctive red and yellow bands. And for heaven's sake, don't disturb that mound of dirt, which houses fire ants capable of swarming a full-grown man and stinging him into anaphylactic shock. As you help gather fruit, carefully avoiding the various lethal hazards pointed out by your companions, you notice strange markings on some of the trees, intricate carvings that seem deliberate rather than the random scratches of animals. Carib markings, Porcupine explains, his voice dropping to a whisper. They were here before us. Some islands, they still are, fierce warriors and not fond of pirates. Indigenous encounters presented yet another danger for Caribbean pirates. While relations between pirates and native populations varied widely from trade partnerships to outright warfare, many pirate hideouts were established on islands still inhabited by indigenous peoples who justifiably resented these invasions of their ancestral lands. You can hardly blame them. If a shipload of unhygienic, disease-ridden thieves showed up in your backyard and started building shanties, you'd probably be reaching for a weapon too. The day's light begins to fade, casting long shadows through the trees and signaling that you should begin the return journey to camp. This presents a new problem. Many of the island's predators are nocturnal, and the fading light triggers their hunting instincts. Porcupine distributes torches to everyone in the group, explaining that fire is your best defense against most wildlife. Except the bats, he adds cryptically, and refuses to elaborate further. As if on cue, the first fluttering shapes emerge from a nearby cave, vampire bats, literal blood-drinking mammals that could sense the heat of your body and the carbon dioxide in your breath. While rarely fatal directly, their bites could transmit rabies and other diseases. Plus, there's something deeply unsettling about having your blood sucked while you sleep. It's like paying taxes, but somehow even more personal and intrusive. The journey back to camp becomes increasingly tense as darkness settles across the island. Nocturnal hunters grow bolder, the distant roar of a jaguar, the slithering rustle of snakes becoming active, and the distinctive buzzing of the Caribbean's most fearsome insect, the bullet ant. Named for the sensation of its sting, comparable to being shot, these inch-long monsters deliver the most painful insect venom known to science. One sting can incapacitate a grown man for 24 hours, leaving him feverish and delirious. A colony could bring down someone in minutes. Your group hurries along the crude path, guided by torchlight and Porcupine's seemingly supernatural ability to navigate in near darkness. You're carrying a sack of fruits and 2 cleaned fish, but the weight feels insignificant compared to the crushing anxiety of being in this predator-filled jungle after dark. Every sound becomes a potential threat, every shadow a lurking monster. Almost there, Porcupine announces, as the trees begin to thin, revealing glimpses of the settlement's torches through the foliage. You've nearly made it back, your first jungle expedition somehow leaving you alive, if not exactly well. As you step from the tree line, you can't help but feel a small surge of accomplishment. You faced down some of nature's most efficient killing machines and lived to tell the tale. That feeling lasts precisely 3 seconds, until you notice the dark clouds gathering on the horizon, flickering with distant lightning. Your momentary triumph evaporates like morning dew in the Caribbean sun, as you realize you're about to face an entirely different category of deadly natural phenomena. The Caribbean's infamous weather systems have claimed more ships, settlements, and lives than all the region's predators combined. And judging by those clouds, you're about to find out why firsthand. The storm appears with the abrupt violence typical of Caribbean weather systems. One moment, the sky holds only a few dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The next you're in the midst of a tempest that seems determined to scrub the very island from the face of the earth. There's no gentle transition, no drizzle before the downpour, just sudden, overwhelming fury. Hurricane season, spits Porcupine, as your foraging party scrambles back into the settlement. Too early this year. The other pirates are already moving with practiced efficiency, securing loose items, reinforcing shelter roofs, and digging trenches to divert the inevitable flooding. No one needs to tell you to help. The alternative is being swept away. The Caribbean hurricane season typically ran from June through November, claiming countless ships and settlements each year. These massive tropical cyclones formed over warm ocean waters, growing into rotating storms that could span hundreds of miles with winds exceeding 160 miles per hour. Pirates, despite their fearsome reputation, held a healthy terror of these natural phenomena. No amount of courage or cannon fire could intimidate a hurricane. Rain falls in sheets so dense you can barely see 10 feet ahead. It's not the gentle patter of an English drizzle, or even the dramatic cloudburst of a summer storm. This is water as a weapon, stinging your skin and dripping into your eyes, no matter how much you squint against it. The wind howls between the makeshift buildings, finding every gap in your clothing, and chilling you despite the tropical heat that preceded the storm. Batten down that sailcloth. Someone shouts over the din, pointing to a large piece of canvas that's come loose from one of the shelters. You and 2 other pirates rush to secure it, fighting against wind that seems to change direction specifically to thwart your efforts. The canvas snaps like a whip, catching one pirate across the face and opening a gash from his eye to his jaw. He barely flinches, gripping the material with bloody hands and continuing to work. In the world of Caribbean pirates, a storm injury is just another Tuesday. Lightning fractures the sky, illuminating the scene in stark, blue-white flashes that burn afterimages onto your retinas. The thunderclaps that follow are so close and loud they seem to reverberate in your chest cavity. You're not a superstitious person, at least you weren't before landing in this godforsaken pirate haven, but it's difficult not to interpret this meteorological onslaught as some sort of divine judgment. If so, the Almighty has terrible aim, as you're still standing while far more deserving pirates scurry about the settlement. To the caves comes a shout from somewhere near the center of camp. The order is relayed from voice to voice until the entire settlement is moving toward the island's interior, where natural limestone caves offer shelter from the storm's worst effects. You follow the crowd, slipping and sliding up muddy paths that rapidly transform into miniature rivers, cascading down toward the beach. Historians still argue whether Caribbean pirates developed sophisticated hurricane prediction methods, or simply relied on obvious signs like darkening skies and dropping barometric pressure. Some accounts suggest that older, experienced pirates could feel an approaching storm in their bones, or by observing animal behavior changes. What's certain is that those who survived multiple hurricane seasons developed a healthy respect for these storms and established protocols for riding them out. The cave entrance looms ahead, a dark maw in the hillside, somehow even more ominous than the storm at your back. Inside, dozens of pirates are already settling in, their faces ghostly in the light of hastily lit lanterns. The atmosphere is tense, but not panicked. These men and women have endured such storms before. Some even use the opportunity to break out hidden rum reserves, passing bottles around with surprising generosity. Disaster, it seems, breeds camaraderie even among thieves. Third one this month, grumbles an elderly pirate with a peg leg as he accepts a swig from a dented flask. Never seen a season start so fierce. His companions nod gravely, and you notice many making subtle warding gestures, crosses, knots, or other superstitious movements meant to avert bad luck. Even the most hardened pirates maintained a complex relationship with fortune and fate, especially when confronted with natural forces beyond their control. The cave provides shelter from rain and wind, but does little to muffle the storm's savage roaring. If anything, the rocky chamber amplifies certain frequencies, creating an otherworldly howling that sets your teeth on edge. Water still finds its way in, trickling from the ceiling in countless miniature waterfalls that gradually form puddles on the uneven floor. You find yourself a relatively dry corner and settle in for what promises to be a long, uncomfortable wait. One peculiar aspect of pirate storm management was their attention to drainage systems around their hideouts. Contrary to their reputation for slovenliness, many pirate settlements featured surprisingly sophisticated trenches and channels designed to direct floodwaters away from important structures and prevent erosion of protective earthworks. These systems reflected hard-won knowledge, often learned through catastrophic failures and the loss of previous hideouts to storm damage. A particularly violent gust sends a shudder through the hillside, dislodging small stones from the cave ceiling. Conversations pause as everyone glances upward, wondering if this natural shelter might become a tomb. The moment passes, but the reminder of vulnerability lingers. You're struck by the precariousness of existence in this era, not just from human threats like naval patrols or rival pirates, but from the capricious violence of nature itself. "This ain't even the worst of it," says a woman pirate who introduces herself as Red Hannah, noticing your wide-eyed stare at the cave entrance, where water now flows like a small river. Wait till you've seen a proper Caribbean earthquake. Ground buckles like a ship's deck in high seas, swallows whole buildings. Had one 5 years back that took half the settlement and 30 good pirates with it. She takes a long pull from her flask. 1 minute you're standing on solid ground. Next you're sliding into a crack straight to hell. Indeed, the Caribbean region sits atop an intricate network of tectonic boundaries, making it particularly susceptible to seismic activity. The infamous Port Royal earthquake of 1692 sank a significant portion of that pirate haven beneath the sea in minutes, killing thousands and creating lasting superstitions about divine retribution for piratical sins. Many considered it proof that even the earth itself rejected their lawless presence. As if conjured by this conversation, a low rumbling vibration passes through the cave floor, subtle but unmistakable. Conversations stop mid-sentence as every pirate freezes, eyes wide with recognition and fear. For a moment that stretches into eternity, no one moves or speaks. Then the tremor passes, and a collective exhalation fills the cave. "Just a little one," mutters Porcupine, but you notice he's gripping his knife, hilt so tightly his knuckles have gone white. Happens during big storms sometimes. The combination of hurricanes and earthquakes created a particularly deadly threat in the form of tsunami waves. These massive walls of water could sweep inland for hundreds of yards, destroying everything in their path and drowning anyone unable to reach higher ground quickly enough. Pirates rarely built permanent structures for precisely this reason. When your home might be washed away 3 times a year, architectural ambition becomes somewhat pointless. Outside, the storm continues its assault, hour after merciless hour. The monotonous roar of wind and rain creates a strange, hypnotic effect, and you find yourself drifting in and out of uneasy sleep despite the uncomfortable conditions. Each time you wake, the scene in the cave has shifted slightly. Different pirates awake, different bottles being passed, different quiet conversations happening in shadowed corners. It's like watching a slow-motion theater production where nothing really happens, but the tension never abates. Morning arrives with little fanfare, the storm's fury gradually diminishing until only a steady rainfall remains. Pirates begin venturing to the cave entrance, assessing conditions and planning their return to the settlement. You follow, legs stiff from hours spent on the hard cave floor, and get your first look at the storm's aftermath. The transformation is remarkable and devastating. Where there had been crude but functional buildings, now many stand lopsided or completely collapsed. The carefully maintained paths are buried under fallen trees or washed away entirely. The shoreline has been reshaped, with new debris piles creating eerie sculptures of broken wood, torn canvas, and unidentifiable fragments of what were once useful items. Most shocking is the condition of ships in the harbor. 2 smaller vessels have broken from their moorings and been dashed against the rocks, their hulls splintered beyond repair. Even the larger ships show damage, torn sails, missing longboats, broken masts. For a community that depends entirely on these vessels for survival and prosperity, it's a catastrophic blow. Yet there's no wailing or despair among the pirates as they survey the destruction. Instead, they move with resigned efficiency, already beginning the process of rebuilding and salvaging what can be saved. This, you realize, is simply part of the pirate life cycle: build, lose, rebuild. The transitory nature of their existence isn't just about evading authorities. It's an adaptation to living in a region where nature regularly reminds humans of their insignificance. Could be worse, says Porcupine, appearing beside you as you stare at the wreckage of what had been the community kitchen. 1715 fleet got caught in a hurricane off Florida. 11 Spanish galleons sunk, thousands drowned. We're still alive. He hands you a shovel. For now, anyway. As you join the cleanup efforts, redirecting streams of water away from what remains of the settlement, you notice something oddly beautiful emerging from the chaotic aftermath. Rainbows, not one, but several, arch across the clearing sky, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the destruction below. It's nature's apology, perhaps, or more likely just physics at work. Either way, the pirates barely glance upward, too focused on the immediate tasks of survival. You've survived your first Caribbean hurricane barely, and with substantial help from people far more experienced than yourself. But as you look at the shattered buildings and damaged ships, another realization dawns. These natural disasters weren't just isolated incidents, but constant threats that shaped every aspect of pirate existence. Their temporary structures, portable valuables, and fatalistic outlook suddenly make perfect sense. When your world can be unmade overnight by wind and water, you learn to hold it all loosely. The sky is clearing now, patches of blue appearing between dispersing clouds, but there's an undercurrent of tension among the pirates that doesn't match this apparent improvement. It takes you a moment to understand why. With cleared skies comes visibility. Naval patrols that sheltered from the same storm will soon resume their hunting. Rival pirates will be assessing opportunities created by the destruction. The weather may have calmed, but human dangers remain ever present. Speaking of human dangers, as the community regroups and begins rebuilding efforts, you can't help but notice the subtle but distinct social hierarchy emerging among the chaos. Who gives orders and who follows them? Who receives the first recovered supplies and who waits? Who works alongside whom? It's a complex dance of status and power that you're only beginning to decipher. And somehow, you need to find your place within it if you hope to survive much longer in this harsh new world. The afternoon sun has begun its slow descent toward the horizon, and you're startled to notice how the mood in the camp has shifted. The pirates, who moments ago were arguing over a pile of stolen silk ribbons, have suddenly fallen silent. You follow their gaze to see an albatross circling overhead, its wings spread wide against the azure sky. 7 days of storms coming, mutters a weathered pirate beside you, his eyes never leaving the bird. Death follows that winged demon. You're about to dismiss this as nonsense when you notice every single pirate, even the captain, making subtle protective gestures. Some touch pendants hidden beneath their shirts. Others mutter incantations under their breath. The rational part of your brain wants to laugh, but the primal part recognizes true fear when you see it. Welcome to perhaps the most treacherous waters you'll navigate today. The labyrinthine web of pirate superstitions and beliefs. These aren't just quaint customs. They're rigid, unwritten laws that govern every aspect of pirate existence. Violate them at your peril. Maritime superstitions have existed since humans first dared to venture across water, but pirates elevated them to an art form, blending sailor traditions with beliefs from every corner of the globe. Historians still argue whether these superstitions served primarily as psychological comfort in the face of an unpredictable sea, or as practical risk management strategies disguised as mysticism. Don't just stand there gawking, hisses the pirate. Spit 3 times over your left shoulder and turn round widdershins. You have no idea what widdershins means, but gather from his frantic gesturing that you're supposed to turn counterclockwise. You comply awkwardly, feeling ridiculous, until you notice the palpable relief on the faces around you. Apparently, you've just saved everyone from certain doom. go you. The Caribbean pirates' worldview was a peculiar amalgamation of European folklore, African spiritual practices, indigenous Caribbean beliefs, and hard-learned lessons from the sea. One particularly odd tradition, documented in the journals of a reformed pirate turned merchant in 1721, involved burying a live rooster with a gold coin in its beak at the entrance of new hideouts to ensure prosperity. You'd like to think this was rare, but the suspicious number of roosters you've seen being carried around with peculiar ceremony suggests otherwise. As you continue through the settlement, you notice women are conspicuously absent from many areas. Your assigned guide, more like a pointed guard, explains that women on ships bring terrible luck, with one notable exception. Women with exposed breasts supposedly calm angry seas, which is why so many ship figureheads feature bare-chested women. You're pretty sure this particular superstition was invented by the pirates themselves, rather than handed down by maritime tradition. How convenient. Step over that threshold. Don't walk through it, your guide barks as you approach a crude shelter. And for the love of Neptune's beard, take that hat off inside. The interior of the shelter is dimly lit by candles that give off a peculiar greenish tinge. You realize they're made from tallow mixed with crushed seashells and some kind of herb that smells faintly of anise. Pirates avoided lighting new candles from old ones. It meant transferring bad luck, so each must be lit with a fresh flame, which explains the ridiculous number of flints and tinders you see scattered about. In the corner sits an older pirate, his skin so weathered and dark it resembles saddle leather. Around his neck hang dozens of amulets, shark teeth, polished stones with holes, tiny cloth bags that emit suspicious odors, silver coins punched through their centers, and what appears to be a mummified monkey's paw. This, you're told in hushed tones, is the crew's charmer, part medicine man, part spiritual advisor, part meteorologist. You've walked under the hanging net today, he states without looking up. It wasn't a question. Your blood runs cold because you did indeed duck under a fishing net being repaired earlier, thinking nothing of it. The pirates around you take a collective step back, leaving you isolated in what feels suddenly like a ritual circle. That's 7 years bad luck, someone whispers, unless you appease the sea spirits. Of course it is. The charmer finally looks up, fixing you with eyes that seem too sharp, too knowing for his aged face. The spirits demand tribute. Gold or blood, they care not which. You frantically pat your pockets, hoping to find something of value, but come up empty. The charmer smiles, revealing teeth filed to points and stained with what looks like blue dye, a practice borrowed from certain indigenous tribes who believed such modifications would intimidate enemies and evil spirits alike. Fresh blood it is, then, he says, with disturbing cheerfulness. Before you can protest, he grabs your hand and pricks your finger with a bone needle. The drop of blood is collected in a tiny shell, mixed with rum, and flung toward the doorway with a series of words in a language you don't recognize. There, he pronounces, the debt is paid, small price for your miserable life. The pirates nod sagely, as if this makes perfect sense. To them, it does. The sea is a merciless mistress, and survival depends on appeasing forces beyond human control. In a world before accurate weather prediction, where disease struck without warning and death lurked beneath every wave, superstition provided both explanation and the illusion of control. You're beginning to understand that what modern people might dismiss as silly pirate beliefs were actually complex systems for processing uncertainty and danger. When your average life expectancy can be measured in months rather than years, you grab onto whatever promises protection, no matter how irrational it might seem to outsiders. As you leave the charmer's hut, you notice an elaborate ritual taking place near the shore. A group of pirates are launching a small model ship into the waves, a perfect miniature of their own vessel, complete with tiny cloth sails and thread rigging. They watch intently as it bobs away. Ship burial, your guide explains. If the model survives the night, so will we. He doesn't mention what happens if the tiny craft sinks or breaks apart on the rocks. He doesn't need to. One fascinating historical reality that's often overlooked is how pirates created their own syncretic religious practices. While many maintained nominal ties to Christianity, they incorporated elements from every spiritual tradition they encountered. Archaeological evidence from several Caribbean pirate havens has revealed ritual spaces containing Christian crosses alongside African Vodun symbols and indigenous Caribbean petroglyphs, a physical manifestation of the cultural melting pot that pirate society became. Night approaches, and the settlement transforms again. The pirates gather around fires, but these aren't just for warmth or cooking. Each flame serves a protective purpose, keeping dark spirits at bay. You're warned repeatedly not to let your shadow fall across certain objects, weapons in particular. A shadow mixing with steel supposedly weakens the blade and the arm that wields it. Never whistle near the water after dark, a pirate child solemnly informs you. It calls the wind spirits, and they don't always bring the wind you want. You're about to respond when a hush falls over the gathered crowd. The captain has emerged from his quarters, carrying what appears to be a weathered book bound in some unidentifiable leather. The pirates sit straighter, their faces eager and attentive in the firelight. This, apparently, is a nightly ritual, the reading of fortunes. The captain opens the book to reveal not pages, but a collection of small objects: bones, shells, colored stones, dried flowers, tiny carved figures. He tosses them onto a flat drum, studying how they fall with intense concentration. South winds for 3 days, he announces. Then a merchant ship, Spanish flags, but Dutch cargo. The pirates murmur excitedly. You're skeptical until your guide whispers, he's never wrong, not once in 7 years. Whether by remarkable meteorological instinct, keen understanding of shipping routes, or sheer coincidence reinforced by confirmation bias, These predictions carry the weight of divine prophecy here. You're witnessing the pirate equivalent of scripture being written. As the night deepens, so do the stories. Pirates crowd together, sharing tales of ghost ships that sail against the wind, of mermaids whose beauty drives men to drown themselves, of kraken tentacles that can wrap around an entire galleon. Each storyteller tries to outdo the last, their voices dropping to whispers when describing particularly terrifying fates. You realize these aren't just entertainment, they're cautionary tales, educational tools, and cultural touchstones all at once. The stories bind the community together while reinforcing their shared beliefs and values. Even the most outlandish legends contain kernels of practical wisdom about navigation, weather patterns, or human behavior. The firelight plays across faces from a dozen different nations, men who would have been mortal enemies in any other context, united here by shared superstitions and beliefs that transcend their origins. There's something almost beautiful about it, until you remember these same men would kill you for walking aboard ship left foot first, or for bringing bananas into their quarters. In this moment, you understand something crucial about why you wouldn't survive here. It's not just the physical dangers or difficult conditions. It's that you don't share the mental framework, the intricate web of beliefs that gives meaning to every action and observation. Without that shared understanding, you're not just an outsider, you're a walking bad luck charm, a threat to the delicate supernatural balance that these men believe keeps them alive. As the night grows deeper and the stories darker, you find yourself glancing nervously at shadows that seem to move of their own accord, starting at sounds that might be the wind or might be something else entirely. Despite your modern skepticism, you can't help but wonder if there's something to these beliefs after all. In this isolated place, surrounded by people who accept the supernatural as matter of fact, even your certainties begin to waver. The worst part, if disaster strikes tomorrow, be it storm, shipwreck, or attack, you know exactly who they'll blame. The newcomer who didn't properly respect the albatross. Your contemplation of pirate superstitions is suddenly interrupted by a commotion at the far end of the beach. Shouts echo across the sand as a crowd forms a tight circle. Your guide grabs your arm, pulling you toward the growing spectacle with disturbing enthusiasm. Lucky day for you, he cackles, revealing a mouth with more gaps than teeth. You get to see pirate justice. The circle parts briefly as you approach, revealing two men standing in a cleared space. One is on his knees, hands bound behind his back, his face a mask of terror. The other, whom you recognize as the quartermaster from earlier, stands grimly beside him, holding a weathered piece of parchment. Thomas Webb, the quartermaster announces, his voice carrying across the now silent gathering. You stand accused of theft from your brothers. You took extra rations from the common stores without vote or share. The kneeling man's face crumples. It was just a bit of extra rum. Silence. The quartermaster's voice cracks like a whip. The code is clear. All plunder is declared before the company. All food and drink shared equal, according to rank and articles. You're witnessing one of the most misunderstood aspects of pirate life, their justice system. Despite their lawless reputation, pirates were pioneers of strictly enforced self-governance. Historians still argue whether the various pirate codes represent early experiments in democratic principles or simply practical adaptations to the unique challenges of managing a crew of violent criminals confined to a small wooden vessel. The quartermaster unfurls the parchment with ceremonial gravity. According to the articles you signed with your own hand, the punishment for theft from your brothers is 40 lashes, followed by marooning. A collective intake of breath ripples through the crowd. Even hardened pirates seem sobered by this sentence. You quickly learn why marooning is considered a fate worse than a quick execution. The condemned man will be left on a tiny, barren island with only a pistol with a single shot, a small flask of water, and no food. The single bullet isn't for hunting. It's a mercy offering for suicide when the inevitable starvation begins. What's particularly fascinating about pirate justice is that it was administered democratically, centuries before most nations embraced such concepts. Every major decision, including punishments, typically required majority approval from the crew. In this case, a hasty vote is taken with raised hands, confirming the punishment. The condemned pirate is dragged to a post embedded in the sand. His shirt is torn away, exposing a back already crisscrossed with old scars, evidence that this isn't his first offense. A bosun steps forward with a cat o' nine tails, its 9 knotted cords gleaming dully in the late afternoon light. You turn away as the first stroke falls, but there's no escaping the sharp crack of leather against flesh or the man's agonized cry. By the 10th stroke, his screams have faded to whimpers. By the 20th, he's unconscious, hanging limply from his bonds. Look, your guide insists, gripping your shoulder. This is mercy compared to Navy punishment. Royal Navy would give 100 lashes for the same crime. That's why they call it the cat, because it has 9 lives, and each one hurts worse than death. He's not wrong. One particularly quirky historical fact: while naval floggings routinely reached hundreds of lashes for minor infractions, effectively death sentences, administered slowly, pirate punishments, though brutal, were often less severe and more consistently applied regardless of the offender's background or connections. When the punishment is complete, the unconscious man is cut down. Rather than being immediately marooned, he'll be held until the next suitable deserted island is found during their travels. Pirates rarely backtracked solely to maroon someone. Efficiency trumped immediate justice. Not all crimes get the lash, your guide explains as the crowd disperses. We have our own system. Indeed, pirates developed a surprisingly sophisticated spectrum of punishments tailored to different offenses. For minor infractions, isolation from the crew, a particularly painful punishment in close quarters, was common. Being denied a share of plunder or rum rations served as an economic penalty. Some captains got creative. One particularly sadistic practice involved tying an offender to the mast and having every crew member pass by and pinch a piece of flesh with hot tongs. Killing a brother pirate is death, your guide continues matter-of-factly. Unless it's a fair duel with witnesses. Cowardice in battle is death too. Running a ship aground by negligence. You're marooned on the same spot. He leads you through the settlement, pointing out other aspects of pirate justice. Near the crude dock stands a wooden platform, the equivalent of a courtroom where trials are conducted. Accused pirates could speak in their own defense and call witnesses. While hardly meeting modern standards of due process, it was remarkably progressive for an era when many legal systems still used torture as standard procedure. The quartermaster's the judge in most matters, he explains. Captain only rules in battle or chase. Rest of the time, quartermaster speaks for the crew's interests. This separation of powers, essentially creating checks and balances within pirate governance, was revolutionary for its time. The quartermaster served as a counterbalance to the captain's authority, preventing the tyranny that was rampant in merchant and naval vessels of the era. In fact, according to logs recovered from a merchant ship captured by the infamous Bartholomew Roberts in 1721, several sailors voluntarily joined the pirate crew, specifically to escape the brutal discipline of their legal captain. As you pass by the captain's quarters, raised voices catch your attention. Peering through a gap in the crude door, you see the captain engaged in heated debate with several senior crew members. They're arguing over the division of yesterday's plunder, specifically whether certain luxury items should be counted as part of the common share or as special compensation for those who took extra risks during the raid. Articles say everything's declared before division, argues a scarred pirate with a gold hoop in his nose. Articles also say extra shares for extra hazard, counters another. I nearly lost my arm getting those trinkets. The captain listens to both sides before rendering judgment, splitting the difference in a way that seems to satisfy nobody completely, but prevents outright mutiny. This is pirate democracy in action. Messy, argumentative, but fundamentally more egalitarian than the rigid hierarchies that dominated legitimate society. You hear footsteps approaching and quickly step away from the door. A moment too late, you find yourself face to face with the bosun who administered the earlier flogging. The cat-o'-nine-tails still dangling from his belt, small dark stains visible on its cords. Spying on the captain's counsel, he asks, his voice dangerously soft. That's an offense under the code. Your heart pounds as you struggle to find words. This could be very bad. He wasn't spying, your guide interjects quickly. Mainlanders just lost. I'm showing him around by the captain's orders. The bosun looks skeptical, but eventually nods. Keep him on a shorter leash. Next time, he might lose an ear, or worse. You've just had a narrow escape, but it serves as a stark reminder. Ignorance of pirate law offers no protection from its punishments, and those punishments, while innovative for their time, are still brutal by any modern standard. As evening approaches, you witness one final aspect of pirate justice: enforcement of social codes. A pirate who has clearly had too much rum begins harassing others, knocking over their belongings and making aggressive boasts. Rather than official punishment, he faces immediate peer correction, first verbal warnings, then increasingly physical responses, until he's dunked headfirst into a rain barrel and held there just long enough to inspire sobriety. One particularly unusual aspect of pirate justice that few know about involves how they handle disputes between individuals. According to journal entries from a French prisoner held by pirates in 1717, personal conflicts were often settled on isolated beaches with strict rules. The combatants were allowed only cutlasses, could not stab, only slash, and the duel ended at first blood or when one party yielded. This formalized system prevented escalating feuds that could tear apart a crew. As darkness falls, you reflect on what you've witnessed. Pirate justice was paradoxically both brutal and progressive, a system that combined harsh physical punishment with democratic principles, strict codes of conduct with remarkable social mobility. Pirates created communities where former slaves could rise to command, where captains ruled only by collective consent, and where plunder was distributed according to agreed-upon shares rather than aristocratic privilege. Yet you have no illusions about surviving within this system. One careless violation of a rule you don't fully understand, one misstep in navigating the complex social dynamics of the crew, and you could find yourself facing the lash, or worse. Modern sensibilities about proportional punishment and rehabilitation have no place here, where justice is swift, physical, and often final. The pirate sleeping nearby rolls over in his hammock, unconsciously placing his hand on the hilt of his knife. Even in sleep, these men remain vigilant and dangerous. You make a mental note to tread very carefully tomorrow. In a place where stealing an extra ration of rum can get you marooned, the consequences for more serious transgressions are too terrible to contemplate. The crack of a musket shot jerks you from uneasy slumber just before dawn. For a moment, you think it might be another execution or punishment, but the frantic shouting that follows dispels that notion immediately. Sails Spanish colors, 2 ships bearing down. The pirate camp erupts into organized chaos. Men who moments ago were snoring in drunken heaps are suddenly alert, grabbing weapons and rushing to predetermined positions with practiced efficiency that would impress any military commander. Your guide from yesterday, now transformed from tour guide to fighter, roughly pulls you to your feet. "Stay close if you want to live," he growls, thrusting a rusted cutlass into your hands. "We're under attack." Just when you thought this Caribbean pirate hideout couldn't get more dangerous, you're about to experience firsthand the terrifying reality of raids and defense, the violent heart of pirate existence. From a rocky outcropping, you get your first glimpse of the approaching threat. Two Spanish galleons flying the colors of the colonial guard, their gun ports open like rows of hungry black mouths. This is no opportunistic raid by rival pirates. It's an organized military action aimed at eradicating the pirate threat. The historical reality of pirate havens was one of constant vigilance. Though we often imagine these hideouts as secret paradises unknown to authorities, the truth was far more precarious. By 1718, Spanish, English, French, and Dutch naval forces were specifically tasked with hunting down pirate settlements. Most hideouts lasted months, not years, before being discovered and destroyed. Don't just stand there gawking, shouts a nearby pirate, his face half covered by a red bandana. Get to the eastern battery. You follow him on shaking legs to a crude fortification where several small cannon have been positioned. These aren't the massive ship-mounted guns you might imagine, but lighter, swivel guns mounted on flexible bases. What they lack in power, they make up for in maneuverability. They can be quickly repositioned as needed. One particularly fascinating tidbit few people know. Pirates often preferred using weapons captured from their victims rather than purchasing them, leading to bizarre hybridized defense systems. The cannon before you is Spanish-made, but mounted on an English carriage, fired with Dutch powder, and loaded with improvised grapeshot made from scavenged metal scraps and pebbles. The first Spanish ship is now close enough that you can see figures moving on its deck. A flash of light from its bow is followed seconds later by a thunderous boom, and a geyser of sand erupting 20 yards from your position. They're ranging their shots, zeroing in on the pirate defenses. The next one will be closer. They've found the right range, mutters the red bandana pirate. Get ready to dance. The pirate defenses respond with a volley of their own, the smaller cannon making sharp, staccato reports compared to the Spanish gun's deeper bass. Your ears ring painfully with each shot, and acrid smoke burns your eyes and lungs. Through watering eyes, you see one of your shots connect with the Spanish ship's rigging, tearing through sail and rope. A ragged cheer goes up from your position. Historians still argue whether pirate defensive tactics were innovative adaptations to their underdog status or simply desperate improvisations. What's clear is that they rarely engaged in stand-up fights when they could avoid them, preferring ambush, deception, and mobility over direct confrontation with superior forces. The second Spanish ship has changed course, moving toward the hidden cove you discovered yesterday during your exploration. With a jolt of fear, you realize they're planning to land troops behind the main defenses. They know the layout. You shout to Red Bandana, pointing toward the flanking vessel. He spits a curse and signals to a runner. Tell the captain they're moving for Smuggler's Cove. We need men there now. The fact that you've spotted this maneuver seems to have raised your status slightly. Red Bandana gives you an appraising look before tossing you a powder horn. Make yourself useful, and try not to blow us all to kingdom come. You fumble with the unfamiliar equipment, trying to recall what little you know about muzzle-loading weapons from historical documentaries. The process is frighteningly complex. Measure powder, pack it down, add wadding, add shot, add more wadding, prime the firing pan. All while enemy cannon fire rains around you and men scream orders and counter-orders. By the time you've loaded your first shot, probably incorrectly, the situation has deteriorated dramatically. The lead Spanish ship has moved into the harbor itself, close enough that you can hear officers shouting commands in rapid Spanish. The second ship has disappeared from view, presumably landing troops at the unprotected cove. A peculiar aspect of pirate defense strategies was their use of false surrenders, a tactic documented in the journal of a Spanish officer who survived an engagement with the infamous Charles Vane. Pirates would appear to strike their colors in submission, only to open fire when the enemy vessel came close to accept the surrender. This violation of naval combat norms was one reason why authorities showed pirates little mercy when captured. The pirate captain, whom you've only glimpsed from a distance, until now strides along the defensive line, cutlass in one hand and pistol in the other. Unlike the flamboyant portrayals in modern films, he's dressed practically in simple, dark clothing. The only concession to vanity is a peacock feather tucked into his battered hat. "Hold the line," he bellows. "Remember Jamaica. No quarter expected and none given." The reference to Jamaica sends a visible surge of resolve through the pirate ranks. Later, you learn this refers to a British raid on a pirate haven where, despite promises of clemency for surrender, every captured pirate was hanged on the spot. The battle intensifies as Spanish Marines begin landing from rowboats. These aren't poorly trained conscripts, but hardened colonial troops in neat uniforms, advancing in disciplined formation. The pirates' advantage, such as it is, lies in their intimate knowledge of the terrain and their utter disregard for conventional tactics. Instead of meeting the Spanish line directly, the pirates break into small groups, firing from behind cover, then melting away only to reappear elsewhere. It's guerrilla warfare before the term existed, and it's temporarily effective at slowing the Spanish advance. You've been separated from Red Bandana in the confusion, and find yourself crouched behind a fallen palm tree with two other pirates you haven't met before. One is bleeding from a graze along his arm, but seems more angry than hurt. "They fired the ships," he snarls, pointing toward the harbor where black smoke is rising from several smaller pirate vessels. "The bastards are burning our escape route." This was standard practice in anti-pirate operations. Destroy their ships first, then hunt down the stranded pirates. Without vessels, even survivors of the initial attack would eventually be captured or starved into submission. A Spanish flanking party stumbles upon your position. There's a chaotic exchange of fire at point-blank range. The wounded pirate beside you drops with a musket ball through his chest. The other returns fire, hitting a Spanish Marine in the leg before being run through with a bayonet. You scramble backward, swinging your cutlass wildly more as a defensive gesture than an attack. Its blade connects with something solid, a Spanish Marine's musket stock, deflecting a thrust that would have impaled you. Pure luck, not skill. The Spanish soldier recovers quickly, reversing his grip to swing the heavy wooden stock at your head. You duck, feeling the wind of its passage, and stumble backward over uneven ground. Your foot twists painfully, and you fall. This is it. The Marine stands over you, bayonet poised for a killing thrust. His face shows no particular malice, just a man doing his job, eliminating vermin from a colonial outpost. The shot that saves you comes from nowhere, a pirate marksman hidden in the trees. The Spanish Marine crumples, and suddenly the immediate threat is gone. But the battle is far from over. You limp toward what sounds like the main concentration of pirate resistance, determined not to die alone on this blood-soaked beach. The sounds of combat grow louder, clashing steel, pistol shots, screams in multiple languages. Rounding a stand of palms, you come upon the climax of the battle. The pirate captain and a small corps of defenders have formed a last stand around the main treasure cache, a cave entrance partially hidden by vegetation. They're surrounded by Spanish Marines, outgunned and outnumbered. What happens next demonstrates why pirate legends persist centuries later. Rather than surrender, the captain triggers a carefully prepared trap, a series of buried powder kegs connected by fuses. The explosion throws sand and bodies into the air, creating momentary chaos that the pirates exploit with savage efficiency. To the hidden cove, the captain shouts above the ringing in your ears. The Pearl is waiting. In the confusion, you learn a critical piece of information. This entire defense was never meant to be successful. It was a delaying action, buying time for the pirates' most valuable ship, hidden in another cove entirely to be prepared for rapid departure. The pirates never intended to defeat the Spanish attack, only to survive it. Archaeological evidence supports this pattern at several confirmed pirate havens. Rather than heavily fortified permanent settlements, most were designed for quick evacuation, with escape routes and hidden secondary anchorages being more important than fixed defenses. You find yourself swept along with the retreating pirates, half running, half crawling through a narrow jungle path as Spanish musket balls snap through the foliage around you. Your lungs burn, your twisted ankle throbs with each step, and a shallow cutlass wound along your ribs, received in some forgotten moment of the chaotic battle, leaks blood that attracts swarms of biting insects. The hidden cove turns out to be a narrow inlet on the island's far side, invisible from the sea except at very close range. There, riding at anchor, is a sleek black sloop, smaller than the Spanish galleons, but built for speed. Half the surviving pirates are already aboard, preparing her for immediate departure. By some miracle, you make it to the rowboats and are hauled aboard the sloop just as the first Spanish Marines break through to the beach behind you. Musket balls pepper the water around the retreating boats. The man beside you grunts and slumps forward, a red stain spreading across his back. You've survived, he hasn't. From the relative safety of the departing ship, you watch the pirate haven burning. Black smoke rises in columns as Spanish soldiers methodically torch every structure. The smaller pirate vessels in the main harbor are already reduced to charred skeletal hulls. That's the third hideout we've lost this year, mutters a weathered pirate missing half his teeth. The mainlanders are getting better at finding us. This was the harsh reality of pirate existence in the Caribbean. By the 1720s, coordinated efforts by colonial powers had made permanent bases increasingly untenable. The golden age of piracy was already drawing to its bloody close, though the legends were just beginning. As the burning island recedes into the distance, you take stock of your situation. You've survived the raid barely, but now you're aboard a pirate ship fleeing from naval forces, wounded, without fresh water or clean clothing, bound for who knows where. The devil you knew has been replaced by one you don't. The captain approaches, eyeing you with a mixture of suspicion and amusement. For a mainlander, you didn't do too badly, he admits grudgingly. Saw you spot their flanking move. Quick eyes. Before you can respond, he continues. We'll drop you at Nassau if you make yourself useful aboard, unless you've developed a taste for our life. His grin suggests he knows exactly how terrifying you found this experience. As if to punctuate his offer, a lookout shouts from the crow's nest. Sail ho, Spanish colors bearing down fast. The brief moment of relief evaporates. You're out of the fire, but the frying pan is heating up nicely. The captain barks orders, and the crew leaps to action with the same frightening efficiency they showed during the island defense. Welcome to life on the run. The raid may be over, but your ordeal is far from finished. Darkness falls across the Caribbean as the pirate sloop cuts through inky waters, running without lights to evade the Spanish pursuers. You've been assigned to bail, the least skilled job aboard, but crucial nonetheless. Every dip of the wooden bucket into the bilge water sends pain shooting through your injured ribs, and your hands are raw and blistered after hours of repetitive labor. The Spanish ships fell behind as night approached, but no one believes they've given up the chase. Dawn will likely find them on the horizon again, their superior firepower a constant threat. For now, though, there's an uneasy respite as stars emerge in a velvet sky unmarred by modern light pollution. You pause in your bailing to look up at those stars, the same ones used by sailors for centuries to navigate these waters, and the full weight of what you've experienced in a single day crashes down upon you. Since sunrise, you've been threatened, terrified, wounded, nearly killed, and now find yourself fleeing across open ocean with a crew of desperate men who, under different circumstances, might have murdered you without hesitation. Keep bailing or I'll feed your liver to the sharks, growls a passing pirate, punctuating the threat with a kick protect your good ankle. Remember when you thought visiting a pirate hideout might be an exciting adventure. That naive notion seems to have belonged to someone else, someone who ceased to exist somewhere between the putrid breakfast gruel and watching a man's back explode in a spray of blood mere inches from your face. The hard truth is that you wouldn't have lasted a day in a Caribbean pirate hideout, and technically, you didn't. The hideout itself didn't last the day, reduced to smoking ruins behind you. Yet here you are, somehow still breathing, which is more than can be said for many who began the morning alongside you. Historians still argue whether the dramatic decrease in Caribbean piracy after 1730 came primarily from increased naval patrols, stricter colonial governance, or simply the economics of diminishing returns as merchant vessels began traveling in protected convoys. What's certain is that the romantic era of pirate havens was brutally short-lived, snuffed out by the very imperial powers whose wealth had made piracy so tempting in the first place. You, mainlander, the captain's voice startles you from your thoughts. He stands at the rail, pipe clenched between his teeth, the ember glowing red in the darkness. Against all conventional naval wisdom, pirates often allowed fire aboard their vessels, small comforts outweighing traditional precautions. Come here. You approach cautiously, aware that your status aboard is precarious at best. The captain studies you with eyes that seem to absorb, rather than reflect the scant starlight. You've seen more of our world in one day than most landsmen see in a lifetime, he says finally. What do you make of it? The question catches you off guard. What do you make of it? Your mind races through the day's horrors and surprises, the filth and disease, the strange codes of honor among thieves, the brutal justice, the superstitions, the violence, yet also the democracy in action, the multicultural cooperation, the ingenious adaptations to a life outside civilization's boundaries. You begin, searching for words that won't offend, yet won't ring false. It's not what the stories tell. He laughs, a sound like rocks in a leather bag. Stories. Yes, they'll tell plenty about us when we're gone. Most lies, some truth, all twisted to suit whoever's doing the telling. He taps his pipe against the rail, sparks briefly illuminating his weathered face. But you've seen the truth of it now. The blood and the filth and the freedom too. Freedom. The word hangs between you. For all its horrors, there was something undeniably free about the pirate haven men living by their own rules, however harsh, answering to no king or company. A terrible freedom purchased at terrible cost. One of the most persistent myths about Caribbean pirates is that they were simply anarchic criminals. Archaeological evidence from several pirate settlements suggests something far more complex. Communities that developed their own governance, economies, and even primitive healthcare systems. A particularly quirky discovery was a surgeon's kit found at a pirate camp near Tortuga, containing both standard European medical tools and indigenous Caribbean herbal remedies, evidence of practical adoption of useful knowledge, regardless of its source. We're heading for a smaller camp on Isla de Pinos, the captain continues. Less comfortable than what you saw today. He says this with dark amusement, as if the squalor you witnessed could be considered luxury. If you survive until we make landfall, perhaps you'll find passage on a merchant ship headed north. If you survive. Those 3 words contain a universe of uncertainty. There's still the Spanish pursuit to evade. Disease might claim you your wounds, though not immediately life-threatening, show angry red edges in the dim light. The crew might turn on you if supplies run short or suspicions rise. And those are just the threats you can name. A shout from the bow interrupts your conversation. Lights to starboard, ship running dark. The captain is moving before the words fully register, barking orders that send men scrambling up rigging and to battle stations. Another vessel is out there, running without lanterns just as you are almost certainly hostile. Get below. Someone shoves you toward the hatch. Stay out of the way. You stumble down the ladder into the cramped, reeking hold where hammocks hang in impossible proximity, and personal space is nothing but a distant memory. In the darkness, you collide with something that grunts, a wounded pirate from the day's battle, his shoulder roughly bandaged, face gray with pain in the faint light filtering from above. Watch where you're stepping, he mutters, but there's no real venom in it. He's too exhausted, too focused on his own survival. You find a corner among the barrels and slump down, every muscle screaming in protest. Above, feet pound across decks as the crew prepares for possible combat. The wounded man passes you a leather flask. Rum, he explains unnecessarily, helps with the pain. You accept it gratefully, the harsh liquid burning away some of the day's accumulated horrors. It's probably crawling with bacteria, but at this point, who's counting threats? First time in a sea fight, the wounded pirate asks conversationally, as if discussing the weather. You nod, not trusting your voice. Might be nothing, might be everything. He shrugs, then winces at the movement. That's the sea for you. 1 minute calm as a pond, next minute trying to drown you. Same with the life. Weeks of boredom, moments of terror. The life. The way he says it makes it sound like a calling rather than a choice. Perhaps for some it was. Records show that many pirates were former naval or merchant sailors who'd experienced abuse, starvation wages, and brutal discipline under legal employment. For them, piracy wasn't just crime. It was rebellion against a system that treated common sailors as expendable equipment rather than men. Minutes stretch into an hour with no sounds of combat. Eventually, the tension above seems to ease. Feet still move across the decks, but with less urgency. The wounded pirate has dozed off, breath rattling in his chest in a way that suggests he might not see another sunset. You drift in and out of consciousness, pain and exhaustion warring with anxiety. Images from the day flash behind your closed eyelids, the albatross circling, the lash cutting into a man's back, Spanish Marines advancing through smoke, a pirate falling beside you with empty eyes. Your world of coffee shops, and internet connections feels impossibly distant, a half-remembered dream. When you next open your eyes, a gray pre-dawn light filters through the hatch. The wounded man is gone, either moved or dead. You have no way of knowing. Your body feels as if it's been beaten with clubs, every movement igniting fresh pain. Still, you're alive. After yesterday, that counts as victory. You climb painfully back to the deck to find the ship cutting through morning mist. No other vessels in sight. Whether the nighttime encounter was friend, foe, or simply a passing ship keeping its distance from an unknown vessel, you'll likely never know. Still with us are you. It's the captain again, looking as if he hasn't slept at all. Most landsmen would have thrown themselves overboard by now. I considered it, you admit, surprising yourself with the truth of it. He nods as if this is perfectly reasonable. Sea takes some, spares others. Never can tell which until the moment comes. A lookout calls down from the crow's nest, land sighted. Perhaps your Isla de Pino's refuge. The pirates move with renewed purpose, many casting nervous glances over their shoulders, where the Spanish might appear at any moment. You find yourself at the rail, watching the distant smudge of green resolve slowly into another island paradise that will prove anything. But if you're fortunate, you might find passage home from there. If not, well, the possibilities are too numerous and too grim to contemplate. As the island grows larger, you reflect on what you've witnessed. A world of extreme contrasts, where democracy coexisted with tyranny, where men might vote one moment and torture the next, where survival depended on equal parts skill, brutality, and blind luck. A world where freedom and terror walked hand in hand. The truth is, you've survived your day in a Caribbean pirate hideout barely, but not because you adapted or thrived. You survived through luck and the occasional moment of usefulness. Had the Spanish not attacked, something else would have claimed you eventually. Disease, violence, accident, or simple human cruelty. This wasn't a world made for visitors or dilettantes. It was forged by desperation and maintained through blood. The romantic legends that would later emerge, the buried treasures, the swashbuckling heroes, the honor among thieves, contain only fragments of truth, polished smooth by time and distance, until the sharp edges of reality are lost. As the ship approaches the island, sails being trimmed for landing, you understand something vital. You weren't meant to last in this world. Few were. Even the pirates themselves measured success, not in years, but in months of survival, in prizes taken, in wounds endured. Theirs was a brutal, abbreviated existence that most embraced, knowing it would likely end at rope's end or bullet's mercy. Yet something about their defiance, their refusal to accept the rigid hierarchies and predetermined fates that legitimate society offered, would ensure their memory endured long after more respectable contemporaries were forgotten. These filthy, violent, superstitious men created something that, however briefly, challenged the very foundations of colonial power. They failed, as they were always destined to, but the attempt itself guaranteed immortality of a sort. ready to set foot on another slice of paradise, asks a pirate beside you, his tone making clear it will be anything but. You straighten your aching back and nod. Whatever comes next, be it passage home or further trials, you've experienced something few ever will: the unvarnished reality behind the myths. You've seen firsthand why you wouldn't last a day in a Caribbean pirate hideout. And yet, improbably, you have. The light softens as our tale draws to close, the harsh Caribbean sun mellowing to amber as it kisses the horizon. Your breathing slows, matching the gentle rhythm of waves against the ship's weathered hull. The sounds of pirates preparing to anchor fade into a distant murmur, less intrusive now, more like the comforting white noise of rain on a rooftop. Feel your body growing heavier, sinking deeper into comfort as the day's adventures settle into memory. The dangers you've witnessed, the squalor and violence, the strange codes and brutal justice, all begin to transform from immediate threat to fascinating glimpse of a world long vanished. Your eyelids grow pleasantly heavy as the last streaks of sunset paint the clouds in watercolor hues of rose and lavender. The tension in your muscles releases, one by one, like sails being quietly furled at journey's end. The pirate hideout, with all its perils, becomes distant, a story rather than a reality, allowing your mind to drift toward peaceful shores. As sleep approaches like a gentle tide, remember that you've traveled somewhere few ever venture, past the romantic myths, into the complex, contradictory heart of a lost era. And now, safe in the present, you can allow these pirates their hard-earned rest, returning to dust and legend where they belong. The last thing you notice before dreams claim you is how the stars appear, one by one, the same stars that guided countless ships through these waters. Their light has remained constant through centuries of human drama below, watching impassively over pirate and prey alike, over hideouts built and destroyed, over brief lives filled with desperate freedom. Sleep now, knowing you've glimpsed a truth few will ever see, carried safely back from the edge of history's blade. Let the waves rock you gently into slumber, the pirate's world fading to whispers, then silence, then peace.